What if I told you that scattered across the vast deserts of Saudi Arabia lie structures so immense, so precise, that modern engineers struggle to comprehend them? Stones carved and arranged with such perfection, monuments that seem to defy the limits of human capability. Yet they are real. No records, no explanations, only silent testimony to a knowledge lost in the sands of time. Some rise like geometric enigmas against the horizon, others hide in the shadows of forgotten valleys, each whispering secrets we are only beginning to question. How were these massive works built? Who had the vision and the skill to shape stone in ways that challenge everything we think we know about ancient civilizations? Tonight, we step into a world where history and mystery collide, where every corner of the desert may hold clues to a civilization far beyond our understanding. Join me as we explore these ancient marvels, uncovering their secrets and confronting the impossible together. Beneath the relentless sun of northwestern Saudi Arabia, the ruins of the ancient Dadan kingdom rise from the desert like echoes of a lost world. Massive stone walls, weathered by centuries of wind and sand, stretch across the landscape, framing terraces and tombs whose precise alignment hints at an extraordinary understanding of geometry and urban planning. The remnants of monumental gateways, intricately carved with symbols and inscriptions, suggest a civilization that was both sophisticated and powerful, yet nearly invisible in the grand story of human history. As you wander among these crumbling stones, there is a quiet weight in the air, a sense that this place once pulsed with life, commerce, and culture, now reduced to whispers carried across the empty sands. Historians tell us that the Dadan kingdom, flourishing between the 8th century BCE and the 1st century CE, was a vital hub in the incense trade. Its strategic location connected caravan routes stretching from Arabia to the Mediterranean, linking distant empires and cultures. Archaeological evidence confirms a highly organized society with monumental tombs, intricate irrigation systems, and inscriptions that provide tantalizing glimpses of their language, beliefs, and governance. Yet, as much as we can learn from these traces, questions linger. Some of the structures appear engineered with precision that challenges what we understand of construction methods available at the time. How could these enormous stones be quarried, transported, and fitted so seamlessly without modern tools? The answer remains elusive, inviting speculation that stretches beyond conventional archaeology. Among the ruins, there are carvings whose meaning remains a matter of debate. Geometric patterns, abstract figures, and cryptic symbols adorn the walls and tombs. Scholars have attempted to interpret them in the context of trade, religion, or social hierarchy, yet certain forms seem oddly familiar, as though echoing ideas from civilizations far beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Some theorists have even suggested that these patterns hint at knowledge or influences lost to history, knowledge that might have shaped architecture and engineering in ways we cannot fully trace. While mainstream research emphasizes practical and cultural explanations, the sheer scale and sophistication of some structures continue to provoke wonder and, at times, disbelief. Adding to the enigma are the tombs themselves. Carved into cliffs and hillsides, they vary in size and complexity, from modest chambers to monumental burial complexes. Some contain inscriptions that provide names and titles, yet others are entirely blank, leaving their purpose and the identity of those interred open to interpretation. Even the materials used raise questions. Certain stones appear to have been transported from quarries miles away, yet there is no clear record of the techniques employed to move such massive blocks across the desert terrain. Could these feats have been achieved solely through human ingenuity, or is there something we have yet to uncover about the methods of the ancient Dadanites? Walking through the ruins today, one is struck by the interplay of permanence and decay. The desert, which once nurtured life and commerce, now reclaims what civilization left behind. Shadows stretch across the terraces at sunset, elongating walls and columns in ways that make the ruins seem alive, almost breathing with the history of a forgotten people. It is here, in this silence, that the mind begins to wander. What daily rhythms played out in these streets? What stories of triumph, loss, or ambition are etched into the stones now hidden from view? And perhaps most provocatively, what secrets remain buried beneath the sand, waiting for a future generation to decipher? In the midst of this stark, haunting landscape, the Dadan kingdom stands as both a monument and a question. Its achievements are undeniable, yet much of its story remains obscured by time. Each ruin, each carved inscription, each collapsed wall invites us to consider not only what we know, but also what may forever elude our understanding. And as the desert wind whistles through these ancient streets, it leaves behind an unsettling but irresistible thought. The full truth of Dadan, its people, and their knowledge may still lie just out of reach, hidden beneath the sands, waiting for someone curious enough to seek it. As we leave the crumbling streets and monumental tombs of the Dadan kingdom behind, the desert stretches ahead, vast and unbroken, yet punctuated by pockets of life that seem almost impossible in this arid expanse. Among these, the ancient Oasis settlements at the site known to researchers as Misyon emerge like mirages anchored in reality. Palm groves sway gently in the wind, their shadows dancing over stone foundations half buried in sand, while narrow channels of water, traces of ancient irrigation systems, reflect the faint light of the sun, hinting at a civilization that learned to coax life from the harshest of landscapes. Even now, these settlements exude a quiet resilience, as if the desert itself has preserved their secrets, guarding them against time and memory. Archaeologists date the Misyon site to several millennia ago, revealing a network of small but remarkably organized communities. Excavations have uncovered clusters of dwellings, storage pits, and sophisticated water channels, suggesting that these early inhabitants possessed an intimate understanding of their environment. They managed to sustain life in a region where survival required ingenuity, patience, and perhaps knowledge that has since vanished. Yet, for all the explanations that modern science provides, the scale and precision of certain structures, stone walls aligned with celestial points, wells dug with meticulous accuracy, pose questions that remain unresolved. How did they engineer water systems capable of enduring the shifting sands and unpredictable climate? What tools or methods allowed them to shape stone and earth with such exactitude? The site is also adorned with enigmatic features that continue to baffle researchers. Circular stone platforms, aligned along unseen axes, and low-lying terraces, sometimes covered in symbols whose meaning has been lost, hint at purposes beyond mere habitation. Were these spaces communal, ceremonial, or perhaps markers of astronomical significance? Some scholars propose connections to trade routes or to larger regional civilizations that may have influenced the settlement's design. Others suggest more speculative possibilities, that the builders possessed knowledge of the stars, of engineering, and of natural forces that allowed them to transform this barren land into a thriving oasis, leaving behind clues that modern humans struggle to fully comprehend. Walking through Misyon today, the juxtaposition of survival and mystery becomes palpable. The faint outlines of stone foundations speak of daily life, the rhythm of labor, the care of crops, the protection of water sources. Yet interspersed among these practical traces are anomalies that resist simple explanation. Massive stones positioned with uncanny precision, depressions that suggest unknown machinery or rituals, alignments that echo structures found across the region. These are whispers of knowledge that may have been extraordinary, perhaps even lost entirely to history. How much of their expertise was practical, and how much remained shrouded in enigma? There is a quiet beauty to the silence of Misyon, a reminder that human ingenuity and mystery often walk hand in hand. Each footprint left in the sand, each fragment of pottery, each faint inscription carries echoes of lives lived on the edge of the desert's harshness, yet also hints at achievements that stretch beyond what we fully understand. Standing amid the remnants of this oasis, it is difficult not to wonder, what guided these people in shaping their world with such care and precision? What knowledge, lost to time, allowed them to thrive where most would have perished? And perhaps most compelling of all, what still lies buried beneath the sand, waiting to reveal itself to those patient enough to look. As we leave behind the carefully irrigated groves and stone foundations of the Misyon Oasis settlements, the desert once again stretches into an almost endless horizon. Yet even here, where the sands seem to erase the footprints of history, remnants of human ingenuity punctuate the landscape. Among the most enigmatic of these is the Merid Castle ruins, perched atop a rocky escarpment like a sentinel frozen in time. From a distance, it resembles a fortress carved directly from the cliff itself, its angular walls blending with the natural contours of the rock. The sun casts long shadows across the jagged stones, highlighting terraces, stairways, and partially collapsed towers that hint at both architectural sophistication and strategic foresight. The view from this vantage point is breathtaking, an expanse of desert folding into distant mountains, punctuated by occasional oases. But it also provokes an unsettling question: who built this, and why? Merid Castle, according to historians, dates back several centuries, though the precise timeline remains a subject of debate. Its location is undeniably strategic, overlooking trade routes and fertile valleys, and its design suggests defensive purposes. Yet, as researchers study the site, questions multiply. The stones used in its construction are enormous, some weighing several tons, and appear to have been shaped and fitted with a precision that challenges our understanding of pre-modern engineering. The mortarless walls, interlocking stones, and carefully angled terraces suggest knowledge of forces, leverage, and structural stability that seems unusually advanced for the era assigned to the castle. How did its builders lift, transport, and position such massive stones? Could the techniques they used have been lost entirely, or is there a dimension of construction we have yet to recognize? Inside the ruins, the mystery deepens. Staircases carved directly into the bedrock twist upward toward towers that have long since collapsed, while hidden chambers hint at storage, ceremonial spaces, or even secret escape routes. Inscriptions and faint carvings mark certain stones, yet their meaning is elusive. Some are clearly symbolic, others geometric, and a few defy classification altogether. Archaeologists have attempted to link these markings to known scripts and local traditions, but some remain inexplicable, as though encoded messages from a long-forgotten culture lie hidden in plain sight. Could these inscriptions have been practical, decorative, or perhaps even esoteric, intended to convey knowledge only the builders themselves understood? Adding to the enigma are the alignments and orientation of the castle. From certain vantage points, the walls and towers appear to track the movement of the sun and stars, creating patterns of light and shadow at specific times of the year. Mainstream scholars suggest practical reasons, solar alignment for defense or timekeeping. But some researchers have noted curious correspondences with astronomical phenomena that go beyond immediate necessity. Could the architects have possessed knowledge of astronomy that allowed them to integrate cosmic patterns into their construction? Or are these coincidences amplified by the human tendency to seek meaning in the past? Outside the walls, the surrounding landscape adds layers of intrigue. Natural formations, boulders, and terraces near the castle often appear deliberately arranged, blurring the line between human design and geological happenstance. Some stones bear markings that resemble tool impressions, yet their scale and consistency challenge conventional explanations. Could these have been part of ancient engineering, ceremonial practices, or something even more enigmatic? The interplay between natural features and constructed elements suggests an awareness of the environment that goes beyond mere survival, hinting at a culture deeply attuned to its surroundings and capable of manipulating it with precision and purpose. Visiting Merid Castle today, one is struck by a sense of both scale and solitude. The wind whistles through the ruins, carrying grains of sand across fractured staircases and terraces. Sunlight illuminates stones worn smooth by centuries, yet the overall structure remains remarkably intact, a testament to skill and foresight. In this quiet, one begins to imagine the lives that once animated the fortress, the guards keeping watch over distant valleys, the laborers hauling stone up steep inclines, the rulers planning and directing construction. And yet, despite the tangible traces of human activity, a profound mystery persists. How could such a structure have been conceived and executed with tools and techniques that, by our understanding, should not have sufficed? The Merid Castle ruins, like the sites we have explored before, challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient civilizations in the Arabian Peninsula. They invite us to reconsider what we accept as possible, blending historical fact with unanswered questions that linger stubbornly in the desert air. Were these constructions purely functional, designed for defense and survival, or did they encode knowledge, mathematical, astronomical, or cultural, that we have yet to fully decode? And beyond the stones themselves, what might remain hidden beneath the sands, obscured chambers or forgotten inscriptions, waiting for discovery? As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long, shifting shadows across the castle walls, it becomes clear that Merid is more than a ruin. It is a dialogue across time, a monument that speaks of ambition, skill, and mystery. Every stone, every terrace, every unexplained feature offers a window into a civilization that may have understood the desert, the stars, and the forces of nature in ways that continue to elude us. Standing here, the question is not only how it was built, but why, and whether the full story of Merid Castle, like so many of the ancient Saudi structures we have encountered, remains hidden, waiting for those patient enough to seek it. Leaving the imposing stones and commanding presence of Merid Castle behind, the landscape gradually softens, shifting from jagged cliffs to rolling desert plains dotted with rocky outcrops. Here, amid the subtle undulations of the terrain, lies the Qannas site, one of the most enigmatic Neolithic settlements of northwestern Saudi Arabia. From a distance, the remnants appear modest, clusters of stone foundations, shallow depressions in the earth, and the faint traces of pathways etched into the sand. Yet up close, the settlement reveals an extraordinary complexity that defies simple explanation. Circular dwellings, carefully aligned with one another, stand alongside larger communal spaces and enigmatic stone arrangements whose purpose continues to puzzle researchers. Despite its unassuming appearance, Qannas carries the quiet weight of centuries, offering a glimpse into a world where human ingenuity and the harsh desert environment met in delicate balance. Archaeological studies suggest that Qannas was occupied more than 7,000 years ago, placing it among the earliest known settlements in the Arabian Peninsula. Excavations have revealed stone tools, pottery fragments, and remnants of hearths, all indicating a community that was not only surviving, but thriving in a challenging landscape. Researchers note that the layout of the settlement, its circular homes, communal spaces, and access to nearby water sources, reflects a high degree of social organization and planning. Yet even as these findings illuminate daily life, they also raise profound questions. How did these early inhabitants transport and shape the stones used in their dwellings without the technology we consider essential? How did they engineer their water access to ensure a sustainable supply in one of the driest regions on Earth? Adding to the mystery are the unusual stone constructions scattered throughout the site. Some appear deliberately shaped, with flat surfaces and sharp angles that suggest advanced stoneworking skills. Others are arranged in patterns that hint at symbolic or ceremonial purposes. Circles, alignments, and platforms that seem to mirror celestial bodies or natural landmarks. Mainstream interpretations propose practical functions, such as social gathering areas or ritual spaces tied to seasonal cycles. Yet the precision of certain arrangements has led some to speculate on knowledge of astronomy or geometry far beyond what might be expected for a Neolithic community. Were these designs purely functional, or did they encode meanings that are now lost to time? Even the location of Qannas offers a subtle enigma. Situated near scarce water sources, the settlement seems to occupy a carefully chosen crossroads of natural resources and visibility. From the site, one can see distant ridges, dry riverbeds, and seasonal oases, suggesting that its founders had a deep understanding of the surrounding environment. Could they have selected this precise spot for reasons that went beyond immediate survival? Some researchers have noted alignments of certain structures with solar or lunar positions, hinting at a sophisticated awareness of the heavens. Did these early inhabitants track celestial events to guide agricultural practices, social rituals, or even navigation? Or are these alignments coincidental, amplified in significance only by the passage of time? Walking among the remains of Qannas today, the desert wind carries a quiet, almost imperceptible sound across the ruins. Grains of sand brushing against stone, echoing in depressions that may have once been floors or gathering places. The scale of some stone constructions is remarkable. Stones meticulously stacked or leveled, forming circular dwellings with internal divisions that suggest complex social structures. In some areas, the stones are positioned with a precision that seems improbable, given what we know of Neolithic technology. Could there have been methods, now lost, that allowed them to move and fit these stones with such exactness? And if so, what else might they have been capable of? Skills and knowledge that have left only fragments in the desert? Artifacts recovered from the site add further layers of intrigue. Flint tools, polished stone implements, and pottery fragments reveal a community skilled in crafting and domestic life. Yet there is evidence that suggests connections beyond the immediate region. Certain items seem to echo designs found hundreds of miles away, implying contact or shared knowledge with distant communities. How did information, techniques, or materials traverse the harsh deserts of Arabia in this era? Were these people isolated innovators, or participants in networks of communication and exchange that modern scholarship is only beginning to understand? As the sun begins its slow descent across the desert, casting long shadows over the stone foundations of Qannas, one cannot help but feel the presence of lives long vanished. The circular homes, the platforms, the carefully placed stones. They all speak of a people who mastered survival, but perhaps also understood something deeper about their world. Yet despite the insights offered by archaeology, a veil of mystery persists. How exactly were these structures built? What knowledge did the inhabitants possess that allowed them to thrive in such a forbidding landscape? And what secrets remain buried beneath the sands, waiting for a future generation to uncover them? Qannas, in its quiet dignity, is more than a Neolithic settlement. It is a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and perhaps knowledge that stretches beyond our current understanding. Every stone, every alignment, every artifact invites reflection, not only on the people who lived here, but on the questions that remain unanswered. In the heart of the desert, The ruins seem to whisper across millennia, challenging us to consider what was possible, what has been lost, and what may yet be revealed, hidden just beneath the surface of the sands. As we leave the quiet, weathered stones of Qannas behind, the desert landscape gradually transforms once more. Rolling dunes give way to jagged rock formations, their surfaces scarred by centuries of wind and sun, yet still commanding in their presence. Among these ancient outcrops lies one of the Arabian Peninsula's most enigmatic and haunting structures, the Jawan chamber tomb. From a distance, it is easy to mistake the tomb for a natural cave or a fractured cliff face, yet as we approach, the precision of its construction becomes undeniable. The entrance is meticulously carved, rectangular and imposing, framed by stones smoothed and fitted with a care that suggests advanced understanding of both form and function. Shadows play across the surface, accentuating the deep recesses and intricate passageways that lie beyond, evoking a sense of solemnity and quiet reverence. Archaeologists date the Jawan chamber tomb to the first millennium BCE, situating it within a network of necropolises scattered across the region. Chamber tombs such as this one were clearly intended for the burial of prominent individuals, perhaps rulers, priests, or figures of exceptional social standing. Yet what sets Jawan apart is the scale, precision, and apparent sophistication of its construction. The main chamber, carved directly into the sandstone, is vast, with walls aligned and leveled with remarkable exactitude. Some of the stone blocks used to construct inner partitions weigh several tons, yet they fit together seamlessly, without mortar, as though guided by principles of engineering that are not easily reconciled with our understanding of the era. How could ancient builders move and position such massive stones with the limited tools available at the time? And why invest such extraordinary labor into a tomb, whose silent inhabitants are now known only through fragments of pottery and eroded inscriptions? Inside, the tomb reveals a labyrinth of chambers, corridors, and niches. Each space seems deliberate, with entrances and passageways arranged in patterns that suggest both practical and symbolic purpose. Archaeologists have noted that the orientation of the tomb aligns with natural landmarks and, possibly, with solar or celestial phenomena, though the precise intent remains uncertain. Some researchers argue that these alignments reflect ritual practices tied to the cycles of the sun, or even broader cosmological beliefs. Others speculate that they may indicate knowledge of astronomy, or serve as a guide for navigating the desert landscape in an age before maps. Could the builders have possessed a depth of knowledge that combined both practical necessity and esoteric understanding? The carvings within the chambers add further layers of intrigue. Some are simple, geometric shapes etched into walls. Others are more complex, resembling abstract figures whose meaning has been lost over time. Scholars have attempted to interpret these markings in the context of burial rites, social hierarchy, or spiritual symbolism, yet a number resist classification. Certain motifs appear to echo designs found in distant regions, hinting at cultural connections or shared knowledge across vast distances. Could these similarities reflect trade, communication, or perhaps a wider network of shared beliefs that spanned the ancient Near East? Or do they represent something more mysterious, an undocumented system of knowledge that has yet to be deciphered? The tomb's construction also raises questions about the labor and organization required to build it. The precision of the stonework, the uniformity of the chambers, and the careful alignment of entrances suggest coordinated effort over a significant period. How many hands were required to complete such a structure, and what knowledge did they rely on to maintain consistency across the entire tomb? Were these builders trained in specialized techniques now lost to history, or did they possess practical knowledge that modern researchers have yet to understand? The very act of constructing such a tomb in a remote desert setting speaks to the ambitions, beliefs, and technical skill of its creators. Beyond the chambers themselves, the surrounding landscape contributes to the tomb's mystique. The tomb is situated on a plateau overlooking valleys and rocky ridges, its position commanding yet isolated. From this vantage point, the desert stretches endlessly, with occasional oases and distant mountains forming natural landmarks. Some researchers have suggested that the placement was strategic, intended to convey power and status, or to integrate the tomb into a broader network of sacred or ceremonial sites. Yet others note the possibility of more esoteric intentions. Could the tomb have served as a marker for celestial observation, or as part of a ritual landscape designed to align the human and cosmic realms? The desert here is silent, but in its stillness lies a subtle sense of design, as though the tomb and the surrounding terrain are part of a dialogue that continues across millennia. Artifacts recovered from Jawan, though limited, provide tantalizing hints of the lives and beliefs of those interred here. Pottery fragments, small stone implements, and traces of organic material suggest offerings or ritual practices associated with burial. Yet, despite careful excavation, much of the tomb's story remains inaccessible. Erosion, looting, and the simple passage of time have obscured key details, leaving us to piece together meaning from fragments. Could there be hidden chambers, inscriptions, or even knowledge encoded in the architecture itself that we have yet to discover? And if so, what might these secrets reveal about a civilization whose achievements appear, in many ways, far beyond the expectations of their era? Walking through the Jawan chamber tomb today, there is a palpable sense of presence. The narrow corridors, high vaulted ceilings, and meticulously carved walls create an atmosphere both solemn and mysterious. One can almost imagine the builders moving silently through the chambers, carefully placing each stone, marking each niche, and performing rituals now lost to history. And yet, the more we observe, the more questions arise. How was such precision achieved without modern tools? What motivated such labor and attention to detail in a remote desert setting? Were these tombs purely functional, symbolic, or a combination of both, reflecting an understanding of the world that surpasses our assumptions about Neolithic and early Iron Age cultures? Jawan Chamber Tomb, in its quiet majesty, is not simply a resting place for the dead. It is a testament to human ingenuity, belief, and perhaps knowledge that is only partially comprehensible to us today. Every stone, every niche, every carefully aligned chamber invites reflection, suggesting both extraordinary skill and a sense of purpose that transcends time. And as the desert wind moves across the plateau, whispering through corridors and against the stone walls, it leaves a lingering question. How much of this ancient wisdom remains hidden, silently encoded in the architecture and the landscape, waiting for those patient enough to uncover it? As we step away from the solemn corridors and meticulously carved chambers of the Jawan tomb, the desert landscape stretches outward in quiet, undisturbed expanses. The dunes give way to plains punctuated by rocky outcrops, and in this vast, seemingly endless terrain, we encounter one of Saudi Arabia's most enigmatic prehistoric sites, the Rajajil stone columns. From a distance, they rise from the desert floor like a forest of monoliths, their vertical forms casting long, thin shadows in the shifting sunlight. The columns, numbering in the hundreds, are arranged in a deliberate, grid-like pattern, extending across the landscape with an order that feels almost impossibly intentional. Their presence is at once humbling and unsettling, as though an ancient hand reached across time to leave a message we are only beginning to comprehend. Archaeologists date the columns of Rajajil to the 4th millennium BCE, situating them in the Neolithic period. Yet the purpose of these monoliths remains a subject of ongoing debate. Each column, carved from local sandstone, rises to a height of 2 to 3 meters, and many are aligned with astonishing precision. Some stand in rows, while others form circular or oval enclosures, suggesting communal or ceremonial functions. Excavations have uncovered few artifacts in the immediate vicinity, leaving researchers with the difficult task of interpreting intention from form alone. What motivated these early inhabitants to labor so intensively to erect hundreds of massive stones in such a rigid pattern? And what knowledge guided their placement, such that certain alignments appear to correspond with solar and lunar phenomena? The precision of the column's arrangement raises questions that challenge conventional explanations. While some suggest practical or social functions, markers of territorial boundaries, meeting places, or ceremonial grounds, the geometric order of the site seems to hint at something more complex. Lines of sight between the tallest columns, subtle variations in spacing, and alignments with natural features suggest careful planning that goes beyond the functional. Could the builders have been observing celestial events, using the stones as a primitive calendar, or even recording astronomical cycles that guided agricultural or ritual activity? If so, what methods did they use to achieve such accuracy, and how much of this knowledge has been lost to time? Adding to the mystery are the physical characteristics of the columns themselves. While some are roughly hewn, others display signs of deliberate shaping, with flat surfaces and corners that suggest careful attention to form. The sheer scale of moving and erecting these stones in the open desert is remarkable, particularly given what is known of Neolithic technology in the region. How were these massive monoliths transported and positioned with such uniformity? Could there have been techniques, tools, or methods that we no longer understand, knowledge that allowed early humans to manipulate their environment in ways that appear almost impossible by modern standards? Beyond the stones, the surrounding landscape seems to participate in the enigma. The Rajajil columns are situated on a plain surrounded by distant ridges and intermittent water sources, forming a natural amphitheater of sorts. From certain vantage points, the pattern of the stones takes on new meaning. Rows converge, circles appear to intersect, and shadows trace pathways that shift with the sun's movement. Did the builders deliberately integrate these natural contours into their design, or are these alignments coincidental, amplified by human perception over millennia? And if intentional, what understanding of geometry, astronomy, or spatial organization would have been required to achieve such integration? Walking among the columns today, the experience is immersive and haunting. The tall stones seem to whisper across the desert wind, carrying echoes of ceremonies, gatherings, or unknown rites that once took place here. The mind is drawn to questions of scale and intention. Were the columns of Rajajil purely symbolic, serving as markers of sacred or communal space? Or do they encode knowledge, now lost, of cosmology, mathematics, or ritual practices that connected the inhabitants to their environment in ways we can only speculate? The mystery is compounded by the lack of written records or artifacts, forcing us to interpret meaning solely from spatial arrangement and subtle physical traces. Scholars have also noted the possibility that the site may have served multiple purposes over time. Some columns appear to have been erected earlier than others, suggesting a dynamic, evolving landscape of use. Could successive generations have added to an original plan, adapting it to changing social, environmental, or spiritual needs? And if so, what does this tell us about continuity, memory, and the transmission of knowledge in early Arabian societies? The columns of Rajajil may not represent a single act of construction, but a dialogue across centuries, an ongoing expression of human ingenuity in the face of a challenging desert environment. Another compelling aspect of the site is the alignment of certain stones with astronomical events. Observations suggest that some columns mark solstices or equinoxes, creating shadow patterns that shift in precise ways throughout the year. Mainstream research interprets these features as early attempts to track time or guide seasonal activities, yet the accuracy and scale are striking. How did these ancient builders measure, observe, and record celestial movements with such consistency? And if these alignments were intentional, what knowledge of the sky did they possess that allowed them to translate cosmic phenomena into stone? The human element of Rajajil is perhaps the most compelling mystery. The construction required not only technical skill, but also social organization, cooperation, and shared purpose. Hundreds of massive stones had to be quarried, transported, and placed with care, a feat demanding both ingenuity and labor. What motivated these people to commit such effort in a remote desert plain to structures whose meaning we struggle to understand? Were they driven by religious devotion, a desire for social cohesion, or an understanding of forces both earthly and celestial that have since faded from collective memory? Standing among the columns of Rajajil today, one is struck by both the monumentality of human effort and the subtlety of its design. Each stone, each alignment, each shadow that stretches across the desert evokes questions that remain unanswered. This is a place that speaks across millennia, where human curiosity and skill meet the mysteries of the natural world, challenging us to reconsider the capabilities and ambitions of early civilizations. And as the wind sweeps through the columns, carrying fine grains of sand across their surfaces, it leaves a lingering thought. How much of the knowledge and purpose behind these monoliths has been lost? What truths remain hidden, waiting beneath the desert floor or encoded in the stones themselves, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover them? As our journey continues deeper into the silent heart of the Arabian Peninsula, the desert begins to shift once more. The wind softens, carrying with it a faint whisper, like a memory rising from the dunes themselves. And then, almost without warning, the land opens. Before us lies Qaryat al-Faw, a place suspended between recorded history and the uncertain edges of human understanding. At first glance, it appears almost unassuming: weathered stone foundations, scattered walls, the remnants of a once thriving oasis settlement. But as the sun moves overhead, the ancient city reveals a different face. Shadows sharpen the outlines of its ceremonial structures and marketplaces. Buried streets seem to rise toward the surface as though eager to be remembered. Qaryat al-Faw does not simply rest in the desert. It lingers there, waiting. Located near the edge of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, the site feels like a threshold between worlds. Archaeologists describe it as a major center of the ancient Kinda kingdom, a crossroads of caravans and cultures where incense, spices, and ideas flowed freely. The city prospered between the 4th century BCE and the 4th century CE, anchored by access to rare water sources and protected by the surrounding cliffs. But standing here, listening to the endless hush of the desert wind, one cannot help but sense that there is more to the story than commerce and geography. Stone inscriptions lie scattered across the site, texts carved in the South Arabian alphabet, offering prayers, dedications, and glimpses into the lives of its inhabitants. Some are surprisingly detailed, referencing gods whose names drift like half-forgotten echoes from a distant era. Others are enigmatic, fragmentary, or symbolic, their meaning still debated. Were these simply markers of personal devotion? Or do they hint at rituals, beliefs, or practices that time has deliberately concealed? And then there is the architecture. While much of the city has succumbed to erosion, certain structures remain unexpectedly precise. The layout of residential quarters suggests a high degree of planning. Drainage channels cut through the earth with deliberate engineering. Storage pits and workshops appear to have been organized around a central logic: efficient, consistent, purposeful. For a settlement perched at the edge of one of the harshest deserts on Earth, its sophistication feels almost improbable. How did the people of Qaryat al-Faw manage to cultivate such stability in a region where sandstorms and heat could strip the life from a traveler within hours? How did they sustain agriculture, manage trade routes, and maintain social order across generations? The accepted explanations, oases, seasonal rainfall, and a network of alliances, are sound. But when viewed against the overwhelming scale of the desert, they raise deeper questions. Did the inhabitants possess knowledge of the environment that has since been lost? Or did the land itself once behave differently, offering a kind of abundance we no longer see? As we move closer to the heart of the ruins, a larger structure begins to dominate the view. A monumental building believed to have served ceremonial or administrative purposes. Its remaining walls rise in thick slabs, arranged with a precision that seems almost mathematical. Even in decay, its geometry commands attention. The artistry carved into fragments of plaster and stone hints at a culture that valued both beauty and meaning. Floral patterns interwoven with symbols whose purpose remains unresolved. Some researchers propose that this building was a temple, perhaps dedicated to a local deity. Others suggest it was a gathering place where caravans met to exchange goods, stories, and alliances. But a few scholars, noticing peculiar alignments between certain walls and celestial events, have wondered whether parts of the structure served observational or calendrical functions. A coincidence? Perhaps. Yet when standing at the threshold, watching the sunlight spill through the broken entrance arch, the positioning feels too intentional to dismiss outright. In recent years, excavations have uncovered graves surrounding the city, tombs sealed with care, some containing artifacts of surprising craftsmanship, jewelry fashioned from gold and semi-precious stones, weapons engraved with looping motifs, pottery that blends styles from distant cultures. These finds confirm that Qaryat al-Faw was anything but isolated. It was connected to a vast web of ancient societies stretching across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. Yet the more we learn, the more questions arise. Certain objects appear at odds with the region's known trade patterns. Materials from distant lands that should not, by all reasonable expectations, have made their way here. Decorative elements that resemble styles seen thousands of kilometers away. Are these simply the result of far-reaching trade networks? Or do they hint at movements of people, ideas, or influences that mainstream history has yet to fully understand? Walking among the ruins, the silence deepens. It becomes easy to imagine the city at its height. Merchants calling out from shaded stalls, children weaving between the alleys, priests performing rituals in the dim glow of late afternoon, travelers arriving from lands whose names we no longer recognize. The streets would have carried not just goods, but stories, curiosities from beyond the horizon, shared beside lanterns flickering in the desert night. And then, at some point, it ended. We know that Qaryat al-Faw eventually declined and was abandoned. The reasons, however, remain uncertain. Shifting trade routes, harsh climate changes, internal conflict. Any of these could explain the city's fall, but none have been proven beyond doubt. Some archaeologists point to layers of sudden sand deposition, as though the desert reclaimed the site with unusual speed. Others note architectural collapses that might suggest seismic activity. A few have even speculated about societal transformations, changes in belief systems, migrations, or events recorded only in the faintest lines of surviving inscriptions. Was Qaryat al-Faw simply a victim of natural forces, overwhelmed by winds and time? Or did something more complex occur? A convergence of pressures, internal and external, that slowly erased the community, until nothing remained but stone and dust. As we stand at the outskirts of the city, gazing toward the horizon where the dunes begin to rise like pale waves, the past feels close yet unreachable. The sun casts long shadows across the weathered foundations, stretching them into shapes that mimic memories, familiar yet impossible to fully grasp. Qaryat al-Faw offers, leaving the solitary majesty of Qasr al-Farid behind, the desert landscape stretches once more into vast, seemingly endless plains. Here, the horizon is punctuated not by towering cliffs or solitary tombs, but by shapes that seem almost abstract, linear, and unnervingly precise. Across these plains lie the Mustatils, rectangular stone monuments, often stretching hundreds of meters in length, their long, low walls forming unmistakable geometric outlines that challenge both imagination and understanding. From above, their forms are even more striking. Elongated rectangles, some with additional smaller enclosures, hinting at a deliberate design whose purpose remains elusive. On the ground, the stones appear modest, yet the scale of construction is undeniable, a testament to the labor, coordination, and vision of those who erected them thousands of years ago. Archaeologists date the Mustatils to the Neolithic period, roughly between 5000 and 3000 BCE, making them some of the earliest large-scale structures in the Arabian Peninsula. Unlike the isolated grandeur of Qasr al-Farid or the precision of Rajajil's stone columns, these monuments are defined by repetition and scale. Long, linear walls enclose rectangular spaces that may have served as gathering sites, ceremonial grounds, or even markers of sacred land. Excavations have uncovered little in the way of artifacts. Pottery shards, small stone tools, and occasional traces of animal remains, but the scarcity of direct evidence leaves the Mustatils' purpose largely a matter of speculation. Why build such enormous monuments in remote desert plains with such exacting linearity and yet leave behind so few clues to their function? The precision of the Mustatils is remarkable. Despite their immense length, often exceeding 600 meters, the walls maintain alignment across undulating terrain, rising over small hills and descending into shallow valleys with a consistency that appears intentional rather than incidental. Some researchers suggest practical explanations. Perhaps the structures delineated territories, served as livestock enclosures, or functioned as gathering places for seasonal rituals. Yet the sheer scale and effort required to construct them, combined with their uniformity and lack of clear utilitarian features, suggests a purpose beyond mere practicality. Were these monuments symbolic, ritualistic, or even astronomical in design, encoding knowledge or belief in their orientation and proportion? Adding to the enigma is the interior of many Mustatils. Within the long rectangles, archaeologists have discovered small cairns or stone platforms, occasionally accompanied by remains of animals, suggesting ceremonial or sacrificial practices. Mainstream interpretations posit that the Mustatils may have functioned as ritual spaces where communities came together for offerings or rites, perhaps connected to fertility, seasonal cycles, or ancestor veneration. Yet these interpretations only deepen the mystery. Why devote such vast resources to enclosures that seem largely empty? Why select such remote, arid locations? And how did these early people transport, align, and construct stones across such distances without advanced technology? The arrangement of Mustatils across the landscape is also striking. In some regions, dozens of rectangular structures appear in clusters or parallel rows, forming patterns that can only be fully appreciated from an aerial perspective. From the ground, the walls appear almost random, yet from above, the repetition, alignment, and spacing hint at a deliberate plan. Some researchers suggest a connection with celestial events, pointing to alignments with sunrise, sunset, or specific seasonal markers. Others propose that the structures formed part of a symbolic landscape, a vast canvas upon which Neolithic communities expressed social, spiritual, or cosmological ideas. Could these elongated rectangles represent more than physical boundaries? Could they encode ideas, beliefs, or knowledge that is no longer accessible to us? The labor involved in constructing Mustatils is staggering. Even the smallest enclosures require the coordinated movement of countless stones, carefully positioned to maintain alignment and stability. For the largest structures, this effort would have required organized groups, knowledge of geometry, and an understanding of the desert environment, skills that suggest sophisticated social organization in communities we often imagine as nomadic or semi-nomadic. How did these early people coordinate such efforts? What knowledge guided them, and why was such monumental labor invested in structures whose practical utility is unclear? The physical characteristics of the stones themselves add another layer of intrigue. Most are uncut or only lightly shaped, yet their careful placement demonstrates an understanding of balance, spacing, and orientation. The walls, while low in height, form unmistakable linear boundaries that endure across millennia of wind, rain, and sand erosion. In some instances, the corners of the rectangles are slightly offset or contain small platforms, suggesting additional functionality or symbolic significance. Could these features represent ritualistic thresholds, astronomical markers, or points of communal gathering? Or were they primarily functional, facilitating social cohesion, movement, or animal management, while simultaneously serving as statements of communal effort and identity? Walking among the Mustatils today, the sense of scale and intention is palpable. Standing inside one of the long rectangles, one is struck by the emptiness, the low walls stretching toward the horizon, and the way the desert seems to envelop the structures, emphasizing their isolation. The silence is profound, yet it carries a resonance of human endeavor, of labor, vision, and purpose that continues to echo across thousands of years. The mind naturally asks questions. How were these aligned with such care across uneven terrain? Why were they built in locations so far from water sources and settlements? And what social, spiritual, or cosmological beliefs compelled these communities to invest so much effort in monuments whose meaning we can only speculate about? Mustatils are, in many ways, both familiar and alien. They echo human ingenuity, organization, and ritual practice. Yet they resist full understanding, leaving their purpose and meaning tantalizingly out of reach. Each stone, each line, and each rectangle invites reflection on the capabilities and ambitions of early Arabian communities. They remind us that human history is not merely a record of survival and subsistence, but of creativity, belief, and the desire to shape the landscape in ways that endure beyond memory. As the desert wind sweeps across these monumental rectangles, carrying grains of sand into long corridors and along low walls, the Mustatils stand as silent witnesses to a past that is both known and unknowable. They challenge our assumptions about the abilities of Neolithic societies, urging us to question what we think is possible and to consider what knowledge may have been lost with the passage of time. And in that silence, a profound thought emerges. How much of human ingenuity and understanding remains hidden in the deserts of Arabia, etched into stone, aligned with the stars, and preserved in shapes that speak across millennia, yet remain largely unexplained? Leaving behind the long, enigmatic rectangles of the Mustatils, the landscape gradually transforms once again. The expansive desert gives way to low-lying plains dotted with irregular mounds and shallow depressions, and here, near the coastal edge of northeastern Arabia, lie the al-Qatif ancient foundations. From a distance, the site appears deceptively simple: scattered stones, linear impressions in the earth, and low, almost imperceptible walls marking rectangular and circular outlines. Yet up close, the scale, precision, and layout of these foundations hint at a civilization that understood both engineering and spatial planning in ways that remain remarkable even by modern standards. The air is still, the horizon endless, and each step across the site invites a contemplation of the lives that once animated these stones. Archaeologists date the al-Qatif foundations to periods ranging from the Bronze Age through the early 1st millennium BCE, situating them within one of the earliest known settlements along the eastern Arabian coastline. Excavations reveal remnants of stone walls, foundations of dwellings, and traces of domestic and communal spaces. While the structures are now reduced to their lowest forms, their organization speaks volumes. Rectangular compounds interspersed with circular or semicircular enclosures suggest a community conscious of both social hierarchy and environmental adaptation. Yet, for all the insight these remains offer, they also provoke profound questions. How did early inhabitants plan and construct settlements that required such coordinated effort and precision in an era presumed to be technologically limited? And why have so many details of their construction methods remained irretrievably lost? The foundations themselves are remarkable in their alignment and proportion. Rows of stones define streets, courtyards, and room-like enclosures that adhere to a surprising sense of order. In some areas, the stones are carefully leveled and interlocked, forming patterns that hint at an understanding of load distribution and structural stability. Other sections feature small terraces or elevated platforms, perhaps for ritual use, communal gatherings, or strategic observation. The more one examines the site, the more evident it becomes that these were not ad hoc constructions. Rather, they reflect a deliberate plan executed with skill and foresight. What knowledge did these early architects possess to guide such precision? Could there have been a system of measurement, design principles, or even rudimentary surveying techniques that allowed them to maintain consistency across the settlement? Beyond their technical sophistication, the foundations raise intriguing questions about the community that built them. Al-Qatif sits near the fertile edge of the Arabian Gulf, providing access to water, fishing resources, and trade routes. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of pottery, stone tools, and traces of trade goods, suggesting a society engaged with its environment and possibly connected to distant regions. Yet, despite these signs of daily life, the scale and meticulous layout of the foundations hint at purposes beyond mere habitation. Could these structures have served ceremonial, administrative, or symbolic functions? Was there an intention to encode social organization, cosmological knowledge, or spiritual beliefs into the very layout of the settlement? Adding to the mystery is the site's relationship with its natural surroundings. Some foundations are aligned with slight elevations, shallow depressions, or even the distant horizon, suggesting an awareness of the landscape that extends beyond mere practicality. Could these alignments have held astronomical significance, marking seasonal changes or guiding rituals tied to celestial events? Or were they simply pragmatic, optimizing for sunlight, wind direction, and resource access? The answer remains elusive, and it is precisely this tension between practical function and possible symbolic meaning that gives the al-Qatif foundations their haunting intrigue. The sheer scale of labor required to construct these foundations also invites reflection. Even in their partially ruined state, the remnants suggest that building and maintaining such a settlement would have required organized effort, coordination among multiple groups, and a deep understanding of local materials. How many hands labored here, and over what span of time? What knowledge of engineering, geometry, or material properties did they possess to create structures that endure, in some form, thousands of years later? And if such knowledge existed, why was it not more widely recorded or transmitted, leaving modern observers to marvel at these silent ruins without a clear explanation of how they came to be? Artifacts scattered among the foundations add subtle clues but deepen the enigma. Pottery fragments suggest domestic life and trade. Stone implements hint at everyday work, and occasional burnt deposits imply controlled use of fire, possibly for cooking, heating, or ritual. Yet these finds are sparse relative to the monumental scale of the constructions. Why build such substantial foundations, organize them with geometric precision, and then leave behind so few markers of occupation or ritual? Could there have been a deliberate intention to obscure or protect knowledge, or has the desert simply erased what once told the full story? Walking through the al-Qatif foundations today, one senses the interplay between human effort and the passage of time. Low walls trace rectangles and circles into the sand. Terraces rise and fall with subtle intention, and the horizon stretches endlessly toward the shimmering waters of the Gulf. The structures speak of vision, coordination, and skill, yet they remain mute on questions of purpose and meaning. Each line, each corner, and each aligned stone seems to suggest knowledge that transcends simple survival. Were these people early pioneers of urban planning, engineers of social cohesion, or practitioners of ceremonial traditions that are now lost to history? Al-Qatif's foundations challenge modern assumptions about the limits of early human capability. They suggest a community capable of careful planning, resource management, and construction with a precision that modern observers often underestimate in Neolithic and Bronze Age societies. And yet, their mysteries persist. What guided the choice of location, the layout of streets and dwellings, and the construction of terraces and platforms? How much knowledge has been lost beneath centuries of sediment, erosion, and human neglect? And most intriguingly, what stories, beliefs, or skills lie encoded in these low stone lines, whispering across the millennia to those patient enough to observe, question, and wonder? Standing among the al-Qatif foundations, the desert wind rustles through the remnants of walls and terraces, carrying a quiet sense of both absence and presence. The settlement is gone, but the evidence of careful design, deliberate labor, and human ingenuity endures. Every stone, every geometric alignment, every subtle pattern invites reflection on the people who built this place, and on the knowledge and purpose that remain hidden from view. In the stillness of al-Qatif, one is reminded that history is not only written in texts or artifacts, but etched into the landscape itself, often in ways that remain tantalizingly beyond comprehension. As the sun begins its slow descent over the eastern plains of Arabia, the desert shifts once again, revealing a landscape shaped by millennia of wind, sand, and human endeavor. Beyond the low, geometric traces of al-Qatif, the eye is drawn to faint, jagged lines stretching across the horizon, remnants of old desert walls and scattered ramparts. At first glance, they appear as nothing more than weathered ridges, broken and partially buried in the sands. Yet as one approaches, the scale, arrangement, and persistence of these structures become undeniable. Long stretches of stone and earth, some linear, some meandering, hint at deliberate construction, as though a civilization long vanished sought to carve order into the vast, unforgiving desert. The scattered ramparts rise and fall, partially eroded, their purpose and origin obscured by time, leaving only questions in their silent wake. These walls and fortifications are believed to date from multiple periods of early Arabian history, spanning several millennia, and are scattered across the northern and central deserts. Archaeologists have noted that while many remain fragmented, the remnants suggest significant effort and coordination. Constructed primarily from locally sourced stone and occasionally reinforced with mud or clay, these walls were clearly designed with intention. Some stretch for hundreds of meters, following ridgelines or valleys. Others intersect natural features, as if carefully integrating the landscape into a broader plan. How were these early builders able to align and extend walls over such vast distances without the surveying tools we take for granted today? And why were these fortifications erected in areas so harsh and remote, where survival alone demanded extraordinary effort? The exact purpose of these walls remains a matter of debate. Mainstream interpretations often suggest defensive or territorial functions, barriers designed to control movement, protect resources, or delineate property. In some regions, the walls appear to enclose valleys or plateaus, creating defensible zones that could be monitored or fortified. Yet in many cases, the alignment seems less about practicality and more about precision, with segments following remarkably straight paths or subtle curves that appear mathematically deliberate. Could these walls have served symbolic or ritualistic purposes in addition to, or instead of, practical ones? Were they meant to guide, impress, or demarcate sacred space rather than to repel invaders? Adding to the mystery are the ramparts themselves. Many of the surviving segments show evidence of careful construction, stones fitted together to form continuous lines, foundations reinforced to resist erosion, and occasional platforms or bastions that hint at human planning beyond simple functionality. Some walls intersect with other structures, forming enclosures or courtyards whose purposes remain speculative. Archaeologists have noted parallels with fortifications found in other ancient desert regions, yet the scale, alignment, and distribution of these walls in Arabia are unusual. What knowledge, social organization, or logistical skill would have been required to plan and execute such a monumental effort? And if these walls were meant to be defensive, against whom or what were they defending? Neighboring tribes, marauders, or something now entirely lost to history? The placement of these walls often appears to correspond with subtle features of the landscape. Ridgelines, dry riverbeds, and shallow valleys are frequently incorporated into the alignment of the fortifications, suggesting that early builders possessed a deep understanding of topography. Could the walls have served a dual purpose, integrating environmental awareness with social or spiritual objectives? Perhaps the builders sought to manipulate the movement of people, animals, or even water across the desert, shaping their world in ways that were both practical and symbolic. And yet, despite the apparent sophistication, much of this knowledge remains buried beneath the sands, leaving modern observers to puzzle over these linear enigmas. Some segments of these scattered walls are particularly striking. In certain areas, stones are arranged in perfectly straight lines for several hundred meters, while in others, curves and angles suggest intentional design. In a few locations, the foundations of towers or elevated platforms hint at vantage points for observation, signaling, or ritual activity. Could these features have allowed communities to communicate across vast distances, coordinate seasonal gatherings, or monitor celestial phenomena? The precision and persistence of these structures suggest a level of planning and foresight that challenges assumptions about early desert societies, yet the exact reasoning behind their placement and construction remains elusive. Artifacts and traces of human activity found along these walls offer tantalizing, though incomplete, clues. Pottery shards, stone tools, and occasional remnants of fire pits suggest that communities interacted with the walls over generations, using them not only as fortifications but also as markers within their social and economic landscapes. Some walls appear to have been reused or reinforced in later periods, indicating continuity of occupation and knowledge transfer. Could the walls have served as both functional and symbolic frameworks for life in the desert, simultaneously guiding survival, social structure, and ritual practice? And if so, how much of the original knowledge has been lost to erosion, shifting sands, and the passage of time? The scattered nature of these walls invites reflection on the broader picture of ancient human activity in Arabia. Unlike centralized settlements or monumental tombs, the walls are dispersed, forming networks of partial enclosures and linear markers across vast terrain. Walking along them today, one can sense the labor, coordination, and vision required to construct them. Each stone, carefully placed, resonates with a silent testimony to human ingenuity and ambition. Yet, their partial preservation also underscores the fragility of knowledge and the limits of archaeology. For every wall we can see, countless others may have been lost entirely, buried beneath the desert, or worn away by centuries of wind and sand. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of these old desert walls and ramparts is their ability to provoke wonder without offering definitive answers. They challenge assumptions about early human capability, social organization, and environmental mastery. How did these communities achieve such precision and scale in construction? What motivated them to impose linear, geometric order on a landscape so inhospitable and unpredictable? And what beliefs, rituals, or knowledge systems were encoded into these structures, messages intended to endure across time, even if their meaning is now obscured? Walking among these fragmented walls today, the desert wind moves through the low ridges and scattered stones, carrying a whisper of human presence that stretches across millennia. The walls speak in a quiet, enigmatic language, of labor, planning, and intention, yet of mystery and incompleteness. They remind us that human history is not only written in monuments or written records, but also etched into the very terrain, where stone lines and ramparts preserve echoes of ancient knowledge, ambition, and creativity. And as we trace the faint weathered outlines across the desert, one is left to wonder, how much of the ingenuity, ritual, and purpose of these early civilizations remains hidden, patiently waiting beneath the sands, and what truths might we uncover if we were able to read the story they left in stone? The old desert walls and ramparts endure as silent witnesses to a past that is both tangible and mysterious. Each stone, each alignment, and each fragmentary rampart invites reflection on human capability, resilience, and imagination. They are monuments not only to survival, but to a sophisticated understanding of landscape, geometry, and perhaps cosmology that has yet to be fully recognized. And in their quiet persistence, they pose one final question to the observer. In a desert where so much has been lost, what else lies hidden, encoded in stone and sand, waiting to reveal the secrets of civilizations that, for reasons we may never fully comprehend, sought to shape their world in ways that still defy explanation? As the vast, scattered ramparts of Arabia fade behind us, the terrain begins to shift once more. The endless sandy plains give way to dark, basaltic fields. The jagged expanse of volcanic rock known locally as Harrat Khaybar. Here, in this dramatic landscape, the eye is immediately drawn to shapes that seem to defy both time and understanding. Stone structures, low and angular, scattered across the blackened lava fields. From a distance, they appear almost abstract, their geometric forms cutting sharp lines into the irregular volcanic terrain. But as one draws nearer, the scale, pattern, and persistence of these constructions become undeniable. Walls, enclosures, and circular formations emerge from the basalt, worn by wind and centuries of desert exposure, yet retaining a deliberate order that hints at intention, planning, and perhaps knowledge lost to the ages. Harrat Khaybar is not a simple desert. It is a field of ancient lava flows, formed millions of years ago, its black stones stretching across the horizon in chaotic beauty. Amidst this raw natural canvas, the stone structures stand out as unmistakably human-made, yet they are enigmatic. Scholars have documented hundreds, possibly thousands, of these constructions, ranging from low-walled rectangular enclosures to circular stone rings, often aligned in clusters or along ridges and depressions of the volcanic terrain. Their exact purpose remains a matter of debate. Were these hunting traps, livestock pens, ritual enclosures, or some combination of functions now obscured by time? And how did ancient communities, working without modern tools, manipulate these rough, heavy volcanic stones to create structures that have endured for millennia in such a harsh environment? Archaeological evidence provides some context but leaves the imagination with far more questions than answers. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal and organic remains associated with some enclosures, places certain structures in the Neolithic period, suggesting they were in use as early as 5000 to 3000 BCE. Yet the diversity of forms, the sheer number of structures, and their distribution across the volcanic landscape suggest a culture with sophisticated knowledge of spatial planning and environmental adaptation. In some cases, stone walls follow the contours of lava ridges, forming linear corridors or enclosures that appear to integrate seamlessly with the natural terrain. Could these alignments indicate a detailed understanding of the landscape, a way to manipulate movement, guide livestock, or even mark sacred sites? The geometric precision of some Harrat Khaybar structures is particularly striking. Circular enclosures with perfectly spaced stones, rectangular pens with right angles, and elongated corridors that stretch over hundreds of meters evoke careful planning and technical skill. Mainstream interpretations suggest these may have served as animal traps or seasonal corrals, but such explanations only partially account for the labor and consistency involved. Why devote so much energy to constructing enclosures in such a difficult and remote environment, particularly when their practical utility appears limited in some cases? Could there be an underlying ritual or symbolic component encoded in the placement, alignment, or shape of these structures that we have yet to decipher? Some researchers have noted patterns in the alignment of certain stone formations. From an aerial perspective, clusters of circular and rectangular structures appear to correspond to natural ridgelines, depressions, and even distant landmarks, creating a subtle, almost imperceptible order in the chaos of the volcanic field. Could these placements have served as markers for navigation, territorial boundaries, or seasonal activity? Or were they part of a broader cosmological system, reflecting an understanding of celestial events, solar cycles, or lunar phenomena? The possibility that these ancient builders integrated both landscape and sky into their constructions adds a layer of sophistication that challenges assumptions about Neolithic societies in Arabia. The labor involved in these constructions is staggering to consider. The basalt stones of Harrat Khaybar are heavy, irregular, and difficult to work with, yet early humans arranged them into precise enclosures, often spanning hundreds of meters. Some walls are remarkably uniform in height and thickness despite being built from raw volcanic rock. How did these communities coordinate such projects? What methods, tools, or techniques did they use to lift, move, and position these stones with such apparent consistency? And if such methods existed, why is there so little evidence of them remaining, leaving us to marvel at the results without a clear understanding of the process? Adding to the enigma is the apparent longevity and reuse of these structures. Excavations have revealed evidence that some enclosures were used over centuries, modified or expanded by successive generations. This continuity suggests not only social cohesion, but also a transmission of knowledge, rules, techniques, and perhaps even spiritual significance that survived over long periods. Could Harrat Khaybar have served as a sacred or communal landscape, where successive generations participated in shared rituals or economic activities? And if so, what cultural beliefs, practices, or understandings of the natural and cosmic world might have guided their construction and continued use? The surrounding environment heightens the mystery. Harrat Khaybar is a rugged, inhospitable volcanic terrain with jagged basalt flows, scattered boulders, and little soil to support agriculture. Water sources are rare, and the climate is harsh, with intense sun, wind, and occasional flash floods. Yet, within this challenging landscape, early communities invested extraordinary labor to create enduring stone structures. What motivated them? Was it survival, social cohesion, spiritual practice, or a combination of factors we can only speculate about? And what does this persistence tell us about the ingenuity, adaptability, and ambition of these early inhabitants? The scattered nature of the structures adds a layer of intrigue. Unlike centralized settlements or monumental tombs, the Harrat Khaybar constructions are dispersed across vast distances, some standing alone on ridges, others clustered in valleys or near lava flows. This dispersal challenges traditional notions of settlement and planning, suggesting a culture capable of coordinated activity over large areas, yet one whose logic and purpose remain opaque to modern observers. Could these arrangements reflect seasonal migration, territorial boundaries, or a complex ritual landscape now lost to memory? Walking through Harrat Khaybar today, one is struck by the interplay of human effort and geological chaos. The rough basalt underfoot contrasts with the deliberate geometry of enclosures and walls, highlighting a remarkable capacity to impose order upon the natural landscape. The silence of the volcanic plains is profound, punctuated only by the wind, the occasional rustle of sand, and the echo of human endeavor frozen in stone. Each structure, from the smallest circular pen to the longest linear wall, evokes questions about purpose, technique, and meaning. What knowledge guided these early builders? How much of it has been lost? And what truths about their society, their beliefs, and their understanding of the world remain hidden beneath the volcanic stones? Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Harrat Khaybar is its endurance. These structures have withstood millennia of environmental change, erosion, and human neglect. They testify to the vision, skill, and determination of communities long vanished, yet they speak in silence, leaving us to interpret intention from stone alone. Could there be undiscovered structures, buried beneath layers of lava or sand, awaiting those who are patient and observant enough to uncover them? And if so, what secrets about early human life, engineering, and ritual might they reveal? Knowledge that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric Arabia and the capabilities of its inhabitants. Standing amid these scattered stone enclosures, the vast expanse of Harrat Khaybar unfolds in every direction, a landscape simultaneously natural and human-made, chaotic and ordered. The interplay between volcanic formations and deliberate construction invites reflection on the ingenuity, adaptability, and ambition of early societies. And as the desert wind sweeps through the basalt fields, carrying centuries of dust and sand across the stone structures, a profound question emerges. How much of humanity's early understanding, its rituals, knowledge, and technical skill, remains hidden in these ancient monuments, silently awaiting discovery, interpretation, and awe? As the jagged basalt fields of Harrat Khaybar recede behind us, the landscape softens into rolling plains and rocky outcrops, revealing a subtler yet equally compelling form of ancient human endeavor. The stone settlement at Rabadha. Here, among low hills and scattered boulders, clusters of stone foundations emerge from the desert floor, partially buried by sand and wind, hinting at a long-lost settlement whose scale and organization are remarkable. At first glance, the site appears modest: low walls and rectangular enclosures, roughly hewn stones, traces of terraces, but a closer inspection reveals a level of planning, construction, and coherence that commands respect and raises profound questions. Each line of stone seems deliberate, each alignment purposeful, as if the builders sought not only to establish a living space, but to shape the landscape according to knowledge or vision now largely lost to us. Archaeologists date Rabadha to the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age periods, with some evidence suggesting occupations spanning several centuries. The settlement includes remnants of rectangular dwellings, low stone walls forming compound enclosures, and what appear to be communal terraces or gathering spaces. Artifacts recovered from the site, pottery shards, flint tools, and remnants of hearths, paint a picture of a community engaged in daily survival, agriculture, and possibly trade. Yet despite these insights, the overall purpose and significance of al-Rabadha remain enigmatic. How could such precise stone constructions be achieved in an era traditionally thought to lack advanced tools or engineering knowledge? And why does the layout suggest a sophistication and forethought that extends beyond simple domestic necessity? The organization of the settlement is striking. Stone walls form rectangular and occasionally circular enclosures, arranged along subtle ridgelines and depressions. The alignment of structures seems to respect natural contours, integrating the topography into the design rather than imposing upon it, a feat requiring both observation and experience. Could the layout reflect a broader understanding of environmental management, water flow, wind patterns, or sun exposure? Or does it hint at symbolic or social imperatives, structuring the settlement according to religious, cosmological, or communal norms? In some areas, the foundations form enclosures large enough to suggest communal or ritual functions, yet these are intermixed with smaller domestic spaces, creating a complex mosaic that raises more questions than it answers. The construction techniques at al-Rabadha are particularly noteworthy. Stones are arranged in deliberate lines, often interlocking or stacked to form durable foundations. Low terraces suggest knowledge of erosion control, while some walls incorporate larger stones at corners or along edges, hinting at structural awareness beyond simple stacking. The precision is modest compared to monumental tombs or megalithic structures, yet it is striking for a settlement of its presumed age. How did these early builders organize labor, transport materials, and maintain alignment across multiple structures without the surveying equipment and machinery we rely on today? Could they have developed measurement systems, geometric techniques, or observational methods that left no trace other than the stones themselves? Evidence from al-Rabadha also hints at interaction with its surrounding landscape. The settlement sits near seasonal watercourses, and some enclosures may have been designed to manage water or livestock. Stone platforms and terraces could have served practical purposes, yet their placement and design suggest additional, perhaps ritual or social functions. Were these terraces designed to host gatherings, mark seasonal changes, or signal status within the community? Could the alignment of enclosures correspond to celestial observations, as seen in other ancient Arabian sites, hinting at knowledge of solar, lunar, or stellar cycles? The answers remain speculative, yet the consistency of design across the settlement invites reflection on the sophistication of its planners. Artifacts and remnants recovered at al-Rabadha provide tantalizing, though incomplete, evidence of daily life. Flint tools suggest hunting and processing of local resources. Pottery shards indicate food storage and preparation, and hearth remnants imply cooking and communal gathering. Yet the scarcity of artifacts relative to the size and organization of the settlement raises further questions. Why invest so much effort in constructing durable stone foundations, only to leave behind so few markers of habitation? Could the builders have intentionally limited artifacts to protect knowledge, or has time simply erased the material traces of daily life? And what might we learn if previously buried or undiscovered sections of the settlement were to be excavated? One of the most compelling features of al-Rabadha is the apparent continuity and reuse of space. Certain foundations appear to have been repaired or expanded over generations, indicating that knowledge of construction techniques and spatial organization was preserved and transmitted. This continuity implies social cohesion, leadership, or communal planning. Yet, it also raises questions about the motivations driving such effort. Were these expansions purely practical, intended to accommodate growing families or evolving needs, or did they reflect ritual, symbolic, or spiritual significance? The interplay between functionality and potential meaning is a central enigma of the site. The relationship of al-Rabadha to other regional structures adds further layers of mystery. It sits within a network of ancient settlements, enclosures, and ceremonial sites spread across northern and central Arabia, suggesting broader patterns of habitation, trade, and cultural exchange. Yet the specific role of al-Rabadha within this network is unclear. Was it a hub for seasonal gatherings, a defensive outpost, a center of ritual activity, or a combination of these functions? Could it have served as a waypoint along ancient trade routes, connecting distant communities through the desert while simultaneously functioning as a spiritual or symbolic locus? The answers are tantalizingly out of reach, preserved in the silence of stone walls and terraces. Walking among the remnants today, the settlement evokes a profound sense of continuity and fragility. The low stone walls trace patterns across the desert floor, aligning with subtle ridges and natural contours. The terraces and enclosures hint at human foresight and adaptation, and yet much remains hidden. Buried foundations, eroded walls, and faint outlines that may once have marked ceremonial or communal spaces. Each stone, each alignment, carries the potential to reveal knowledge of early Arabian engineering, social organization, and cultural practice, but the full picture remains obscured. The settlement also invites contemplation of the human impulse to impose order upon the environment. In a harsh and often unforgiving desert, al-Rabadha represents both survival and intentionality. Its stones speak of labor, planning, and a deep understanding of place. They suggest a society capable of observing, adapting, and shaping its world with deliberate care. Yet they also pose profound questions about knowledge lost to time. What measurement systems, techniques, or cultural frameworks guided the builders? How much of their understanding of architecture, landscape, or social organization remains hidden beneath the desert sands? Perhaps most haunting is the sense of silent communication the site embodies. Unlike monumental tombs or ceremonial sites designed to awe, al-Rabadha's structures are low, modest, and utilitarian in appearance. And yet, through their alignment, layout, and precision, they speak of a community that understood space, planning, and perhaps ritual in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. How many generations labored here, maintaining these enclosures, observing the skies, or participating in communal activities whose meaning is now lost? And what other secrets might lie hidden, waiting for patient observation, excavation, and interpretation? Standing amidst the scattered walls, terraces, and foundations of al-Rabadha, one is struck by the interplay between the known and the unknowable. The settlement preserves traces of human ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience, yet it also embodies the limits of our understanding. Every stone, every line, every carefully aligned corner asks a question we cannot yet fully answer. How did these early communities, without the technology we rely on today, build settlements that endure? And beyond construction, what knowledge, beliefs, and practices guided their lives, leaving marks in stone that speak across millennia yet remain enigmatic? Al-Rabadha endures as both a testament and a mystery. Its foundations anchor us to a past of human determination and creativity, yet their full meaning eludes comprehension. In the stillness of the desert, where wind and sand shift over low walls and terraces, we are reminded that the story of Arabia's ancient peoples is written not only in artifacts or texts, but in the very patterns of stone they left behind. And as we walk these silent streets of memory, one question persists. What truths, hidden in plain sight among the foundations, await discovery, ready to expand our understanding of civilizations that defy explanation even thousands of years later. Beyond the stone foundations of Rabadha, the desert landscape gradually rises into gentle hills and scattered rocky outcrops, revealing yet another layer of ancient human expression, the petroglyph panels of Ha'il in the Janine region. At first, the rocks appear ordinary, weathered, darkened by time and etched with the scars of millennia of wind and sun. Yet as the light shifts and the observer draws closer, patterns emerge. Images carved into stone, depicting animals, humans, geometric forms, and symbols that resist immediate interpretation. The panels are both intimate and monumental, ranging from shallow, barely perceptible etchings to deeply incised figures that catch the eye and provoke reflection. Each carving embodies a deliberate act, a moment in which someone reached out to transform the unyielding surface of rock into a message, a record, or perhaps an offering to forces now beyond our understanding. Scholars date many of these petroglyphs to the Neolithic and Bronze Age periods, some extending as far back as 7,000 years. The sheer variety of the carvings is staggering. Horses, ibexes, camels, and antelope appear alongside human figures, hunters, herders, and abstract forms whose meaning eludes interpretation. There are also geometric symbols, concentric circles, and enigmatic motifs that defy conventional categorization. While mainstream archaeology interprets many depictions as representations of hunting, daily life, or ritual practice, there is an undeniable aura of mystery that surrounds the panels. What guided the selection of imagery? Were these carvings intended as records, warnings, or sacred communications? And how much of the symbolism has been lost to time, leaving us with visual remnants whose full meaning remains inaccessible? The context of the Janine region amplifies the intrigue. Ha'il sits at the edge of plains that, during the Neolithic, would have been dotted with seasonal water sources and grazing grounds. The positioning of the petroglyphs suggests intentional visibility. Some panels face open valleys. Others are placed on ridges or near pathways that may have guided human or animal movement. Could these placements have served practical purposes, such as marking territory, guiding travelers, or signaling the presence of resources? Or were they deliberate choices designed to interact with the landscape, sunlight, and shadow, enhancing their ritual or symbolic significance? Some researchers have even proposed that certain carvings correspond to celestial alignments, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of seasonal cycles or the movements of stars. What is immediately striking about the petroglyphs is the technical skill involved. The etchings vary in depth, precision, and style, suggesting that multiple hands across generations contributed to these panels. Some carvings exhibit a remarkable sensitivity to form, proportion, and perspective. Animals appear in motion, hunters poised with spears, and geometric designs executed with deliberate consistency. The technical expertise is especially notable given the tools likely available: flint chisels and stone implements without metal or advanced engraving devices. How did these early artisans develop such skill? What training or cultural traditions guided their hands, and how was knowledge transmitted across generations in the absence of written language? The thematic content of the petroglyphs also invites reflection. Many images depict animals in dynamic poses, hunters in pursuit, and scenes that appear narrative in nature, hinting at a culture attuned to both environment and story. Could these carvings have been part of communal teaching, ritual practice, or the transmission of cultural memory? Some panels include abstract or symbolic motifs that do not correspond directly to observable life, suggesting an additional layer of meaning, perhaps spiritual, cosmological, or social. Were these symbols part of a shared system of knowledge, a code understood only by the community that created them? And if so, what has been lost in the centuries since? leaving only the silent stone to provoke our curiosity? Spatial patterns within the panels further deepen the mystery. Certain sites feature clusters of carvings, densely etched onto a single rock face, while others are spread across multiple boulders and ridges. In some cases, repetitive motifs hint at intentional encoding or ritual reinforcement. In others, isolated symbols stand alone, as though marking a specific location or event. Could the distribution of these petroglyphs across the landscape reflect social networks, migratory paths, or territorial boundaries? Or might they encode information of a symbolic or ceremonial nature, meant to communicate with the spiritual or celestial realms? The answers remain speculative, yet the consistency of style, the recurrence of motifs, and the integration with natural features suggest deliberate intention rather than random creation. The human presence implied by these carvings is both tangible and ephemeral. Though the creators are long gone, the petroglyphs speak across time, inviting us to imagine the lives, beliefs, and perceptions of early Arabian communities. Who were the hunters and herders, the artisans who etched with care and precision, and the audiences who observed and interacted with these images? Did these panels serve as silent instruction, storytelling, or ritual observance? Or were they part of a broader system of cultural practice that connected multiple settlements and regions, much of which is now lost to the sands of time? Weathering and erosion add another layer of enigma. Some carvings are deeply preserved, while others are faint, barely perceptible, suggesting centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and shifting temperatures. This uneven preservation complicates interpretation, leaving gaps in our understanding and challenging assumptions about continuity and intention. Could it be that some petroglyphs were deliberately made ephemeral, meant to fade with time as part of a ritual cycle? Or does the variation merely reflect the inevitable ravages of the desert, leaving modern observers to reconstruct incomplete narratives from surviving fragments? The Janine petroglyphs also engage the imagination because of their scale and repetition. In some locations, panels extend for hundreds of meters, creating sequences of carvings that may have been experienced as visual journeys across the landscape. Could these sequences have functioned as narrative devices, spiritual pathways, or ceremonial routes? Some researchers have suggested that the carvings may have been integrated with seasonal gatherings, hunting expeditions, or religious observances, linking human activity with natural cycles and celestial phenomena. Yet the absence of corroborating textual evidence leaves these interpretations open-ended, inviting viewers and scholars alike to wonder at the possibilities. Walking among the panels today, one cannot help but feel the resonance of human presence across millennia. The faint images etched into stone evoke a world in which humans engaged intimately with their environment, codifying observation, memory, and meaning into durable media. Yet the desert remains silent, offering no key to decoding the full intent of the carvings. What knowledge, belief systems, or cultural practices do these images represent? How much has been lost over thousands of years? And what fragments of memory survive only in these silent stones? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Ha'il's petroglyphs is their capacity to blend the tangible and the unknowable. They are at once records of everyday life, animals hunted, humans depicted in motion, and markers of something beyond immediate comprehension. A symbolic, ritualistic, or cosmological language that refuses full translation. Each line, each curve, each arrangement across the rocky landscape hints at a knowledge system lost to time, inviting reflection, speculation, and awe. As the sun shifts across the Janine Hills, light and shadow animate the carvings, revealing details previously hidden. The dynamic interplay of illumination underscores the meticulous care of the original artisans and the enduring impact of their work. Yet it also highlights the gaps in our understanding. For every recognizable figure, there is a symbol whose meaning remains opaque, a narrative interrupted, a story half told. How did these early communities perceive their world? What did these images communicate and to whom? And most intriguingly, what remains hidden among the rocks, awaiting discovery or interpretation, that could shed further light on one of Arabia's most mysterious and compelling cultural legacies? The petroglyph panels at Ha'il endure as silent witnesses to human curiosity, skill, and expression. They are monuments to observation, artistry, and intention, yet they resist full comprehension. In their simplicity and intricacy, their accessibility and inaccessibility, they embody the tension between what we can know and what remains forever elusive. Walking these panels today, one is reminded that the desert preserves not only the stones themselves, but the questions they provoke, the wonder they inspire, and the profound sense of human ingenuity that stretches across millennia. And in that silence, one question persists: how much of the story of Arabia's earliest societies, their beliefs, their art, and their understanding of the natural and cosmic worlds remains hidden in stone, waiting to be seen, interpreted, and marveled at? The desert stretches endlessly in every direction, a vast expanse of ochre sands and jagged limestone cliffs under a sky that shifts from the pale gold of dawn to the deep indigo of twilight. Here, in the heart of Saudi Arabia's enigmatic landscape, time seems to move differently. The air is dry, almost silent, carrying only the whisper of the wind and the occasional call of a distant bird. Amidst this austere beauty stands a formation that arrests the imagination, the Naslaa split rock. At first glance, it is deceptively simple, a massive boulder perfectly split down its center, resting upon a broad, flat base. Yet the split itself is what immediately draws the eye. It runs with uncanny precision, a clean, almost surgical line that bisects the stone from top to bottom. The separation is so precise that it almost appears deliberate, as if some unseen hand had drawn an invisible line through the rock and pushed the halves apart. For those who stumble upon it without warning, the effect is startling, even disorienting, as though the rock itself defies the natural forces that shaped its surroundings. Geologically, al-Naslaa is a sandstone monolith, part of the Hima region's vast desert plateaus. Scientists have observed that sandstone, over millennia, can fracture due to natural processes, temperature fluctuations, erosion, and the gradual expansion and contraction of mineral layers. And indeed, many experts attribute the formation to a combination of wind, water, and time, working in harmony to create the illusion of perfection. Yet even with this explanation, there remains a lingering question. How could nature carve such a flawless, vertical split down the very center of a stone without leaving any trace of the chaos usually associated with erosion or fracturing? As one approaches the rock, the split becomes even more compelling. Standing beside it, the rock feels monumental, almost sentient. Sunlight catches on the edges of the fracture, casting shadows that seem to move with a subtle rhythm, hinting at a hidden geometry that feels both ancient and deliberate. The two halves, though separated, remain perfectly aligned, as if they were once joined by some precision unknown to modern engineers. From certain angles, the split is so narrow it appears impossible that a person, or even a tool, could have made it. Yet the desert tells no stories, and the silence of the sands amplifies the rock's quiet, unyielding presence. Archaeologists have long noted that the Hima region and surrounding northern territories of Saudi Arabia are rich with remnants of human history, ancient settlements, petroglyphs, and mysterious structures that predate recorded civilizations. Could al-Naslaa have been shaped by early humans? Evidence of Neolithic tools and stoneworks exists in the wider area, but no definitive signs link any human hands to the rock itself. The precision of the split surpasses what one would expect from rudimentary chisels or stone hammers. Yet here it stands, as if inviting speculation. Was it a tool of some long-lost culture, a marker for a ritual or an observatory? Or is the answer far more elusive, hidden within the slow, imperceptible movements of geological time? Modern explorers and researchers have attempted to replicate the fracture using advanced techniques, high-pressure chisels, controlled explosions, even laser-like technology. But none have achieved the clean, unblemished separation seen in al-Naslaa. The stone's face, smooth and almost polished, resists easy explanation. Unlike typical erosion, which leaves jagged edges, the fracture is plainer, sharp, and elegant. It is as if the rock were split by a force aware of the stone's internal structure, one that respected the very alignment of its grains. Geologists call it a natural wonder, a rare instance of perfect fracture lines in sandstone. Yet the desert doesn't explain why this particular boulder would break so symmetrically while countless others crumble into chaos. Cultural echoes add layers to the mystery. Local folklore speaks of the rock as a place of power, where spirits of the desert gather and ancient energies converge. Travelers passing by have reported a peculiar sensation near the split, a subtle vibration underfoot, a quiet hum carried by the wind, an almost imperceptible resonance that fades once one steps away. While these accounts are anecdotal, they contribute to the rock's aura, reinforcing the sense that al-Naslaa is not merely an inert object, but a silent witness to forces beyond ordinary perception. The split's geometry invites comparison with human-made structures, even though no concrete evidence exists of human involvement. The separation is almost impossibly straight, perfectly vertical, and the rock halves a line along a plane that seems intentional, not random. Some have speculated that ancient civilizations, perhaps possessing knowledge now lost, could manipulate stone in ways we cannot replicate. Could the precision hint at techniques predating recorded history? Or might it point to a deeper understanding of natural forces, harnessed without tools at all? Theories range from the plausible to the extraordinary, yet each finds its limits when confronted with the rock's stubborn reality. Even within mainstream archaeology, al-Naslaa raises questions about the human desire to find patterns and intention in the natural world. The rock exists independently of narrative. It does not confirm or deny speculation. And yet, the human mind is drawn to its perfection, as if the split itself were a riddle, a challenge left by nature, or perhaps something else. The juxtaposition of simplicity and precision creates tension, prompting one to ponder whether we truly understand the forces at play in shaping our world, or if there are phenomena that quietly elude observation. Visitors who linger near the rock often find themselves slipping into contemplative silence. The desert's emptiness amplifies the rock's presence, making it almost impossible to ignore the question that hovers in the mind. How did this happen? Was it the slow hand of time, sculpting and splitting stone over countless centuries, or the deliberate intervention of a consciousness now lost to history? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, at the intersection of science, imagination, and the subtle mystery of the natural world. From certain vantage points, al-Naslaa seems to hold secrets in the shadows of its fracture. Tiny deposits of mineral crystallization glint along the edges, hinting at the rock's long and complex history, while faint erosion patterns suggest forces that are both familiar and strange. One can study it endlessly, examining the alignment of grains, the direction of wind-polished surfaces, and the subtle curvature of the split. But each observation only deepens the intrigue. The rock's silence becomes almost conversational, prompting the mind to wander, to speculate, to question the very nature of explanation itself. Some fringe theorists propose more extraordinary possibilities, that the split was created by advanced technology, lost civilizations, or even forces beyond our current understanding of physics. While these ideas may border on speculation, they highlight the depth of human curiosity and the universal desire to understand what seems inexplicable. Al-Naslaa does not provide answers, but it does provide a canvas for thought, a tangible anchor for the mind's journey into the unknown. It reminds us that, even in a world where science explains much, there remain phenomena that resist categorization, structures that prompt wonder, and mysteries that endure beyond the limits of our imagination. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the desert floor, the Al-Naslaa split rock takes on an even more dramatic presence. The split catches the dying light, illuminating the stone with a warm glow that contrasts against the cool shadow of the surrounding sands. From a distance, it appears both monumental and fragile, eternal yet delicate, as if nature itself paused to observe its own handiwork. The desert wind whispers through the split, carrying grains of sand and time itself, and one cannot help but feel the immensity of history pressing down, urging reflection. Standing before the rock, it is difficult not to consider the broader implications. If nature alone can produce such precision, what other wonders lie hidden in the deserts, mountains, and valleys of our planet, waiting to be discovered? And if human hands, or some intelligence we no longer recognize, played a role, what knowledge has been lost, swept away by the relentless march of time? Al-Naslaa offers no answers, only the quiet persistence of its presence and the infinite questions it inspires. It is a reminder that some mysteries are meant to endure, inviting each observer to confront the unknown, to measure themselves against the silent, majestic witness that is the desert. In the end, the Al-Naslaa split rock remains as it has been for millennia, a symbol of the intersection between natural forces and human curiosity. Its fracture line, so precise and unyielding, continues to provoke awe and speculation alike. Whether sculpted by time, touched by human ingenuity, or shaped by forces beyond our understanding, it stands resolute, inviting every visitor to pause, to question, and to wonder. And as the desert stretches beyond the horizon, empty yet filled with possibilities, one is left with a lingering sense of mystery, an unspoken promise that as we move forward from the enigmas of earlier civilizations, those silent stones that have already challenged our understanding of human history, we travel now to a different frontier. Not far from the boundaries of what many archaeologists would consider the mapped world of antiquity lies a wind-swept plateau, seldom visited and even less frequently understood. It is here, among the high ridges of the northern semi-arid lands, that the ancient fortress ruins of Shanqal emerge from the earth like the last fragments of a forgotten age. At first sight, Shanqal doesn't rise dramatically, nor does it display the monumental scale of more famous ancient strongholds. Instead, its presence is quiet, almost withdrawn, as though the land itself is reluctant to let it be seen. Low morning light spills across the terrain, revealing long, broken lines of stone walls, some half-buried, others strangely intact despite centuries of abandonment. Wind moves through the gaps in the masonry, creating soft, audible tones that echo across the plateau, as if whispers from a world that once thrived here. The stones, dark basalt, flecked with mineral veins, are arranged in a layout that is both geometric and elusive. Straight walls converge at angles too precise to be accidental, while narrow passageways twist through the ruins with calculated purpose. Archaeologists have long noted that the fortress seems less like a defensive citadel and more like a complex blend of military, ceremonial, and perhaps even astronomical functions. Yet despite decades of research, the origins of Shanqal remain uncertain, and the civilization that built it persists as one of the region's most tantalizing mysteries. Historically, this part of the world has been a crossroads of cultures, traders, pastoralists, and empires passing through in waves that span thousands of years. And yet, Shanqal stands apart. Its construction style matches no known architectural tradition with precision. The fortress is too old for some cultures, too advanced for others, and too isolated to tie cleanly into the region's better documented historical networks. Pottery fragments have been found here, but their designs are inconsistent, some resembling early Iron Age markers, others pointing toward a later medieval influence. Carbon samples from charcoal recovered deep within the walls yield dates that spread across centuries, muddying rather than clarifying the timeline. Still, the site offers clues. One of the most discussed features is the Great Western Wall, a long stretch of stone built with a curious alternating pattern. One layer of small stones, then a layer of massive blocks weighing several tons each. Some archaeologists suggest this was meant to distribute structural stress, allowing the wall to withstand environmental forces. Others argue it may reflect a symbolic duality, light and heavy, mortal and divine, earth and sky, a way of embedding cultural identity into the architecture itself. Then there are the observation niches, small slit-like openings carved with remarkable uniformity. Their alignments, once dismissed as random, appear to correspond to specific solar and lunar positions during equinoxes and solstices. Mainstream scholars maintain that this is not unusual. Many ancient societies incorporated astronomical awareness into their constructions. But at Shanqal, something about the precision feels deliberate on a different scale. The angles are mathematically tight, and the positions too consistent to be mere coincidence. We also find the pillared enclosure, a rectangular courtyard lined with basalt pillars, each one hand-shaped and placed with clear intent. The pillars are weathered now, surfaces worn by time, yet their arrangement suggests a ceremonial function. What ritual, what gathering, or what moment was once centered here remains a matter of speculation. Some researchers propose that it served as a communal meeting ground or a military training area. Others suspect a sacred component, perhaps connected to seasonal cycles or ancestral veneration. And then we reach perhaps the most perplexing of Shanqal's features, its subterranean chambers. Beneath the fortress, accessible through a series of narrow, descending corridors, lie rooms carved directly into the bedrock. Their ceilings are surprisingly smooth, as though finished with tools more refined than those typically associated with early builders in this region. The chambers are small and sparse, with only faint traces of soot on the walls, suggesting occasional use, but not habitation. One chamber contains a stone platform. Its purpose is unknown. Another contains a sequence of carved marks, lines, circles, and symbols that have yet to be translated. Archaeologists generally caution restraint here. The marks could be simple tally counts, map sketches, or even graffiti left by later occupants. But at Shanqal, where nothing quite fits into a neat historical framework, every mark raises additional questions. Why carve these symbols in the darkest part of a hidden chamber? Who were they meant for? What information did they once convey? The mystery deepens when we consider that Shanqal is not mentioned in any surviving texts of the region. Neighboring cultures kept detailed chronicles, royal lineages, trade agreements, boundary disputes, but the fortress, despite its strategic position and unique construction, appears nowhere. Was it deliberately omitted? Or perhaps it belonged to a people whose records have long since vanished. As with many ancient sites, theories flourish where facts thin. The mainstream interpretation is cautious but compelling. Shanqal was likely built by a small, semi-independent polity, perhaps a tribal confederation or local power, seeking to secure its territory during a turbulent epoch. Its unusual architecture might reflect a blend of influences absorbed from neighboring societies, adopted through trade or migration. The astronomical alignments, though precise, could simply be the result of generations of observational knowledge accumulated by a culture deeply connected to its environment. Yet this explanation, while rational, leaves gaps. Why build such an isolated fortress with engineering so far above regional norms? Why carve subterranean chambers with such care? And how did a place like Shanqal avoid integration into the sweeping tides of empire that eventually engulfed the region? More speculative theories attempt to answer these questions. Some researchers suggest that Shanqal may have served as a refuge for a displaced culture, a group fleeing conflict or climatic hardship, bringing with them architectural traditions from elsewhere. Others propose that the fortress was not entirely defensive, but functioned as a kind of ritual observatory, where seasonal cycles were monitored and interpreted for agricultural or spiritual purposes. The idea is not extreme. Many ancient societies used constructed spaces as cosmological instruments. Then there are the fringe hypotheses, ideas that remain on the edge of academic discourse, but captivate the imagination nonetheless. A minority of independent researchers claim the precision of Shanqal's stonework exceeds what should have been possible with the tools available at the time, implying lost techniques or knowledge yet to be rediscovered. A few go further, suggesting connections to vanished civilizations whose remnants have been scattered or erased. Others point to the subterranean chambers as evidence of esoteric practices, secretive rituals, or encoded messages intended to preserve something of great importance. These ideas, while certainly speculative, persist because Shanqal does not fully yield to straightforward explanations. Every excavation offers new data but rarely clear answers. Every structural detail invites both practical interpretation and deeper mystery. The more closely one studies the fortress, the more it seems to straddle the line between the ordinary and the enigmatic. Consider the unusual weathering patterns found on some stones, a diagonal scoring that does not match typical erosion. Geologists propose that strong seasonal winds carrying mineral-rich sand could be responsible, gradually etching the surface over centuries. But others note the consistency of the scoring, raising questions about whether these marks might have been intentionally created. If so, why? Were they functional, symbolic, or simply decorative in ways we no longer understand? And then there is the orientation of the fortress itself. Shanqal is positioned along a ridge that overlooks both ancient travel routes and distant horizons. Its placement is too strategic to be accidental, but also too isolated to reflect typical settlement patterns. Some researchers argue that the site may have served a dual role, both watchtower and sanctuary. From here, one could monitor the movement of people across vast distances or retreat from the chaos of the outside world. The duality of purpose may have been the secret to Shanqal's endurance through generations of turmoil. The more one learns, the more indistinct the boundaries between function and symbolism become. Perhaps that ambiguity is part of Shanqal's identity, a place meant to be both practical and spiritual, both protective and contemplative. A place shaped by people who saw no contradiction in merging the utilitarian with the sacred. As the sun sets over the plateau, shadows gather around the ruins, deepening the contrasts of stone and sky. The fortress seems to shift in character, becoming less a structure and more a presence. Quiet, solemn, patient. Its stones hold stories no one today can fully read. Its chambers conceal secrets that may never be recovered. And yet Shanqal remains, resisting erosion, defying time, provoking questions. Why was it built in this way, in this place? Who were the hands that shaped these basalt walls, and what vision guided them? What knowledge did they possess? Knowledge that might now be lost to us. For now, the answers lie somewhere between history and possibility. And as with so many ancient structures science has yet to fully explain, the fortress invites us not merely to study it, but to wonder. What might still rest beneath the soil of Shanqal, waiting, quietly, for someone to see it? Nestled among the ochre-colored cliffs and winding valleys of northwestern Saudi Arabia, the old town of al-Ula emerges like a whisper from another era. From a distance, the ruins appear almost mirage-like, blending with the natural sandstone formations that cradle the settlement. Narrow alleyways, once bustling with the rhythm of daily life, now stretch empty, lined with the crumbling remains of mud-brick homes and public buildings. The sun casts long shadows over the facades, highlighting the intricate, albeit faded, geometries of windows and doorways, hinting at a time when the town was vibrant with commerce, culture, and community. Al-Ula sits in a unique geographic corridor, a natural oasis amid the desert expanse, and its location likely contributed to its historical significance. Archaeological evidence indicates that the town was a hub of trade, connecting northern Arabia with the Levant and beyond. Artifacts uncovered in the area, including pottery, inscriptions, and remnants of trade goods, suggest that al-Ula once played a pivotal role in the incense and spice routes, facilitating cultural and economic exchange across regions. Yet, much of its story remains obscured, buried beneath centuries of sand, stone, and human neglect. Walking through the remains, the scale and craftsmanship of the buildings immediately capture attention. The structures, built from sun-dried mud brick and supported by stone foundations, reveal a sophisticated understanding of materials and environment. Some walls, despite centuries of erosion, retain traces of decorative patterns, perhaps intended to reflect light or convey status. Certain doorways are remarkably low, suggesting either practical adaptation to climate and wind or deliberate architectural convention, an expression of cultural identity that modern observers can only speculate upon. The spatial layout of the old town hints at an organized, communal lifestyle. Houses cluster around central courtyards, while narrow streets wind purposefully between them, creating both intimate neighborhoods and defensible pathways. Evidence of water management, including channels and cisterns, speaks to ingenuity in sustaining life in an arid environment. Yet these engineering feats raise questions. How did such an intricate settlement thrive in this harsh terrain, and why was it eventually abandoned? What forces, environmental, political, or social, led to the gradual desertion of a town that seems to have been meticulously planned? Al-Ula's proximity to monumental Nabatean sites, including the famed rock-cut tombs of Hijra, introduces further layers of mystery. While there are clear cultural and trade connections between these civilizations, the precise nature of their interactions remains uncertain. Did the residents of the old town participate in broader regional networks of knowledge and ritual? Were they artisans, merchants, or observers of celestial cycles? Or did the town serve a function lost to time, perhaps ceremonial, administrative, or symbolic, echoing the enigmas found in other ancient Arabian structures? Archaeologists have noted peculiarities in some building features. Certain platforms and terraces align with specific points on the surrounding horizon, leading some researchers to propose that the town may have incorporated elements of astronomical observation. Could the movement of stars or the cycles of the sun and moon have guided the design of streets, homes, and communal spaces? The alignment, however, is subtle, leaving room for interpretation. Others suggest these features were intended for defense or social organization. Yet the precision of the layout seems to imply a combination of practical and ceremonial considerations. Among the ruins, one encounters remnants of defensive structures, low walls, watchtowers, and narrow passageways that would have controlled movement within the town. While these features suggest an awareness of potential threats, the level of fortification does not fully explain the scale of the settlement or the sophistication of its architecture. This discrepancy invites reflection. Was Al-Ula a town built for protection, for prestige, or for purposes we can barely imagine today? The town's abandonment adds another layer to the mystery. Geological and climatic studies suggest that changing water availability, shifting trade routes, or broader environmental pressures may have contributed. Yet, the precise timing and reasons for desertion remain elusive. Some theories posit that political upheaval or the rise of rival centers played a role, while others suggest that social or religious transformations influenced the population's movement. Each possibility highlights the fragility of human endeavors, even in settlements that were once thriving and strategically placed. Walking along the cracked streets, one notices signs of human adaptation to the environment. Elevated thresholds, recessed windows, and narrow alleys all indicate an intimate understanding of temperature control, wind direction, and community planning. It is a testimony to ingenuity, an early form of urban design where survival and social interaction coexisted in balance. Yet despite these innovations, much remains undeciphered. Why were certain areas reserved for ceremonial purposes, while others served daily life? What rituals, if any, defined this town's social fabric? Artifacts scattered across the site provide tantalizing glimpses into daily existence, yet they offer no definitive answers. Pottery fragments reveal contact with distant regions, possibly indicating trade or cultural exchange, but their origins are not fully mapped. Small inscriptions, often eroded or incomplete, hint at literacy and record-keeping, yet their content is largely undeciphered. These fragments provoke more questions than they resolve. Who were the inhabitants? What did they believe? And how did they communicate their understanding of the world? Beyond the material evidence, the old town of Al-Ula holds an intangible presence. A sense of continuity and human ambition stretching across centuries. The layout, the construction, and the subtle integration with the surrounding landscape suggest an intention to endure, to communicate something beyond mere survival. Was the town conceived as a statement of power, a communal sanctuary, or a sacred site? Or did it serve multiple roles, evolving over time as the society itself changed? Some researchers have ventured speculative interpretations. The apparent alignment of certain streets and terraces with celestial events has prompted theories that the town functioned in part as a calendrical observatory, perhaps guiding agricultural or ritual activities. Others, inspired by similarities to other enigmatic Arabian sites, suggest symbolic or spiritual functions, marking ancestral territories, encoding collective memory, or representing cosmological concepts. While these ideas remain unproven, they underscore the depth and complexity of human intention embedded in the town's layout. The surrounding landscape itself participates in the narrative. Towering cliffs, hidden valleys, and natural water sources seem carefully observed by the town's designers. From elevated vantage points, one can imagine the interplay between human settlement and the vast desert beyond. Did the inhabitants see the desert as a barrier, a conduit for trade, or a sacred space in its own right? Did the topography inform ritual practices, social organization, or defense strategies? The land and the ruins together pose questions that linger, defying simple explanation. Time has left its marks in both visible and subtle ways. Wind and sand have reshaped facades, eroded inscriptions, and smoothed edges, yet they have also preserved the layout, allowing modern explorers to trace pathways and understand urban patterns. Each shadowed alley, each collapsed wall, tells a story that is simultaneously clear and cryptic. The physical remains invite interpretation, yet they resist definitive conclusions, a tension that is both frustrating and compelling for those who study the site. The old town of al-Ula, with its mixture of sophistication and enigma, encourages contemplation on the broader nature of human civilization in ancient Arabia. Its ruins testify to ingenuity, adaptability, and an awareness of both the environment and human needs. Yet the unanswered questions, the purpose of certain alignments, the reasons for abandonment, the full scope of cultural practices, persist. The town seems to exist in a space between the known and the unknown, a liminal zone where history, archaeology, and speculation converge. As the sun dips behind the surrounding cliffs, casting the town in hues of gold and amber, the silence amplifies the sense of mystery. The old town does not speak in words, but in patterns, alignments, and enduring stone. It challenges observers to reconstruct its story from fragments, to imagine the lives of those who once walked its streets, and to ponder the knowledge they possessed. What was the full extent of their civilization, and what truths have been lost to time? The ruins invite us to explore further, to wonder, and to recognize that the mysteries of al-Ula are far from fully revealed, an enduring enigma awaiting the gaze of those willing to look closely. Nestled within the arid expanses of northwest Arabia, the Hima site emerges as a silent gallery etched into stone by hands that lived thousands of years ago. The petroglyphs here are not hidden in a cave or tucked away in secret valleys. They lie exposed on rocky outcrops, confronting the vast desert with an unspoken presence. The heat of the sun scorches the landscape, yet the engraved figures retain a stark permanence, a frozen dialogue between human intention and natural endurance. At first glance, the rock faces seem simple, unremarkable, but upon closer inspection, they reveal intricate images of humans, animals, and enigmatic symbols preserved against the passage of millennia. Hima's petroglyphs span an extraordinary range of forms and subjects. Detailed carvings depict camels, ibexes, and cattle, often rendered in dynamic motion, capturing the fluidity of life in the desert. Human figures appear engaged in hunting, herding, and ritualistic activity, their stylized forms communicating narratives that we can only partially comprehend. Some carvings are simple outlines, while others display remarkable sophistication, with etched patterns conveying texture, movement, and proportion. Scholars have estimated that these engravings date back as far as 7,000 years, situating them among the earliest known expressions of human artistry in the Arabian Peninsula. What immediately strikes an observer is the sheer scale of the site. Rock surfaces stretch for kilometers, hosting hundreds of petroglyphs, each carefully placed and seemingly deliberate. The distribution of images is not random. Some researchers suggest patterns emerge when viewed collectively, as if the artists were creating a visual language to communicate with their community or even with the natural environment itself. Could these carvings have served as maps, calendars, or instructional tools? Or were they primarily symbolic, intended to record myths, spiritual beliefs, or communal memory? The location of Hima itself invites contemplation. Positioned along ancient pathways that likely connected settlements and grazing lands, the site may have functioned as a landmark for travelers and herders. Yet the carvings go beyond mere markers or guides. Their artistry, scale, and repetition suggest ceremonial or ritualistic significance. Certain panels depict scenes that appear highly structured, almost theatrical, as if narrating events or enacting stories important to the community. Could these images have been part of initiation rites, hunting ceremonies, or spiritual observances? The absence of written records means we are left interpreting through visual clues alone, a task as delicate as it is speculative. A closer study of individual motifs deepens the intrigue. human figures often appear disproportionately small next to large animals, perhaps emphasizing the importance of certain species in the ecological or cultural context. Weapons, tools, and adornments are etched with precision, suggesting detailed observation and knowledge of daily life. Some symbols, however, remain elusive: geometric shapes, spirals, and abstract lines that defy immediate understanding. Are they purely decorative, or do they encode information lost to time? Could they represent celestial events, seasonal cycles, or mythic cosmologies? Each mark invites reflection, and each unanswered question reinforces the sense of mystery. One particularly striking feature of the Bir Hima carvings is their layering over time. Evidence indicates that successive generations returned to these rock faces, adding new images atop older ones, creating palimpsests of human experience. This layering suggests continuity, a persistent cultural significance of the site spanning centuries or even millennia. The act of returning and re-engraving points to traditions, knowledge, and perhaps beliefs that were deliberately transmitted across generations. Yet, the precise nature of that continuity, what was remembered, what was altered, and why, remains tantalizingly obscure. Environmental factors also play a role in the interpretation of Bir Hima. The desert landscape surrounding the site has shifted over thousands of years. Water sources may have existed nearby, vegetation patterns have changed, and the region's climate has fluctuated. The artists of Bir Hima likely lived within an ecosystem quite different from what we see today. Did these environmental conditions influence the subjects chosen for depiction? Were the carvings in part a form of ecological observation, or a record of human interaction with a changing landscape? The answers remain speculative, yet they underscore the deep connection between the creators and the world around them. Researchers have noted subtle alignments and spatial arrangements among the petroglyphs that hint at intentional design. Certain carvings face specific directions, while others are grouped in sequences that may correspond to natural features or celestial phenomena. Could these orientations reflect practical functions, such as tracking seasonal movement of animals, or ritualistic purposes, aligning with the sun, moon, or stars? These possibilities, while unproven, suggest that the site's significance extended beyond aesthetic expression, potentially serving as a medium for knowledge transmission or spiritual practice. The petroglyphs also reveal glimpses of social structure and interaction. Scenes of groups hunting, herding, or participating in communal rituals imply organized cooperation, shared knowledge, and cultural norms. The presence of animals, both domesticated and wild, highlights the intricate relationship between human and environment, underscoring survival strategies, religious symbolism, and economic priorities. Yet, without complementary records, the motivations behind these depictions, why certain animals were emphasized, why particular human activities were immortalized, remain enigmatic. Some of the carvings hint at practices or beliefs that may border on the abstract or symbolic, challenging conventional interpretations. Recurrent motifs, such as spirals, interconnected lines, or stylized figures, could represent conceptual ideas, maps, or cosmological frameworks. Could these images convey knowledge of star patterns, seasonal cycles, or sacred geography? Or might they serve as mnemonic devices, helping communities recall complex social, ecological, or spiritual information? Each hypothesis highlights the sophistication of the artists and their engagement with both tangible and intangible aspects of their world. The preservation of Bir Hima's petroglyphs is remarkable, considering their exposure to the harsh desert environment. Wind, sand, and temperature extremes have weathered the rock, yet the engravings endure, defying millennia. Their endurance not only preserves visual culture, but also offers insights into resilience and human intentionality. It is as if the creators sought permanence, leaving a record designed to outlast generations, a silent testament to existence, creativity, and memory. Beyond archaeology and art, the site stimulates broader questions about human capability and cognition. The precision, scale, and complexity of the carvings challenge assumptions about prehistoric communities. Were these works created by people using conventional tools and methods, or did they employ techniques that have since been lost? Could there have been a symbolic or ritualized knowledge embedded in the act of engraving itself, a form of cultural continuity or sacred practice beyond what we can fully reconstruct today? Modern visitors to Bir Hima often report a profound sense of connection, as though the carvings transmit something beyond their visual form, a dialogue between past and present, the living and the departed. Standing before the rock faces, one can trace the outlines of camels, hunters, and abstract motifs with fingers or gaze, sensing both human intention and the passage of time. The site functions as both archive and mirror, reflecting not only the culture that produced it, but also the curiosity, imagination, and interpretive effort of those who encounter it centuries later. Speculative interpretations have naturally emerged alongside mainstream scholarship. Some propose that Bir Hima served as a ritual landscape, with each engraving contributing to ceremonial or religious practice. Others suggest symbolic or mnemonic functions, encoding social, ecological, or cosmological knowledge. There are even more adventurous theories, considering the possibility of alignment with celestial bodies, maps of migration routes, or interactions with unknown external cultures. While these ideas remain conjectural, they highlight the openness and complexity of the site, revealing the limitations of modern understanding when confronted with ancient intentionality. The relationship between Bir Hima and surrounding landscapes adds further layers of intrigue. Nearby wadis, water sources, and natural pathways seem intertwined with the placement of carvings, suggesting that the site may have functioned as part of a larger cultural or ecological network. Was the act of engraving itself connected to ritual movement through the landscape, to pilgrimage, or to seasonal gatherings? Did the petroglyphs form part of a broader system of communication, signaling, or memory across the region? These questions persist, reminding us that context is often as important as content in deciphering the past. Over millennia, the petroglyphs have become both familiar and alien. We recognize forms, animals, humans, objects, but their meaning is filtered through the lens of distance, lost context, and cultural transformation. Yet this very ambiguity imbues Bir Hima with power, encouraging ongoing exploration, interpretation, and wonder. Each viewing, each careful study, becomes an act of dialogue, bridging time and inviting us to consider human creativity, perception, and intent across vast stretches of history. As sunlight fades and shadows deepen across the carved rock faces, the sense of mystery intensifies. The Bir Hima petroglyphs endure, neither fully understood nor easily forgotten, a silent testimony to human engagement with the environment, belief, and memory. What motivated the hands that created these forms? What knowledge, rituals, or stories did they hope to preserve? The answers remain beyond reach, but the questions themselves propel curiosity, imagination, and reverence for the enduring enigma of this extraordinary site. In the vast desert silence, Bir Hima stands as a monument to the sophistication, resilience, and mystery of ancient Arabian cultures. It compels us to reflect on the vastness of human history, the persistence of memory, and the limits of our comprehension. Perhaps the ultimate lesson of Bir Hima is that the past often resists easy explanation, challenging us to look, to interpret, and to accept that some of history's most profound legacies remain shrouded, awaiting discovery, understanding, and wonder. On the banks of the Wadi Hanifa, the ruins of Diriyah's Turaif district rise from the desert as a testament to human ambition and ingenuity, though they now lie mostly silent and weathered. From a distance, the remains present a patchwork of crumbling mud-brick walls, narrow streets, and the skeletal outlines of once imposing palaces and fortresses. The sun casts a golden haze over the sandstone facades, highlighting the intricate patterns of openings, alcoves, and towers, hinting at a society that sought to balance form, function, and symbolism. Walking among the ruins, one is immediately struck by the scale of planning evident in the district's layout, as well as by the lingering questions about its origins, purpose, and eventual decline. Turaif district served as the original seat of power for the first Saudi state, established in the 15th century, yet the echoes of its history are much older. Archaeological evidence and historical accounts suggest that this area was strategically chosen for defense, administration, and trade. The mud-brick walls, often several meters thick, enclose courtyards, residential compounds, and public spaces, all interconnected by a network of narrow streets designed to facilitate movement and surveillance. The sophistication of the construction indicates a mastery of local materials and environmental adaptation, with walls that provide insulation against the harsh desert heat and low-hanging winds. Yet, as impressive as these practical features are, they are only a portion of what makes Turaif compelling and mysterious. Walking through the Turaif district, one senses a deliberate layering of purpose and symbolism. Some structures appear fortified, while others seem more ceremonial, with terraces and platforms hinting at spaces for gathering, ritual, or governance. Certain walls bear inscriptions and patterns that remain difficult to interpret, suggesting a language of symbols or social markers whose meanings have been lost. Could these features have been used to encode status, political authority, or religious belief? Were they intended to be read visually, spatially, or even ritually? The absence of comprehensive records leaves these questions open, and every fragment of stone becomes both a clue and a puzzle. The urban planning of Turaif district is particularly striking. Residential compounds cluster around central courtyards, forming neighborhoods that feel intimate yet highly organized. Streets and alleyways meander purposefully, sometimes narrowing to create controlled pathways, at other times opening into communal spaces. Archaeologists have noted the apparent intentionality of sightlines, suggesting that the arrangement of buildings may have been influenced by social hierarchy, defensive strategy, or ceremonial practice. Could the placement of towers, walls, and public squares have been informed by astronomical considerations, local topography, or symbolic alignment? The precision of this urban design indicates that even centuries ago, the builders were thinking in terms that blend practicality with deeper meaning. Evidence of water management, including channels and cisterns, underscores the ingenuity of the district's inhabitants. The Wadi Hanifa itself provided a lifeline in the arid landscape, but the manipulation of water reflects deliberate planning, technological skill, and a comprehensive understanding of environmental dynamics. How this infrastructure was integrated into the daily lives of residents, their trade networks, and their defense strategies is still a subject of investigation. Could these water channels also have had ceremonial or symbolic significance, representing purity, life, or divine favor? Such possibilities remain speculative, yet they deepen the sense of mystery surrounding the district. Diriyah's Turaif district also invites reflection on social organization and political ambition. The arrangement of palaces, administrative buildings, and communal areas implies a society that was hierarchical, yet interconnected. Courtyards may have functioned as forums for negotiation, arbitration, or ritual, while elevated terraces provided vantage points for oversight and surveillance. Did these spaces also serve as stages for displaying power or religious devotion? Were they markers of social cohesion, or were they deliberately designed to impose control? Each spatial decision appears deliberate, yet the broader narrative, the interplay of politics, culture, and belief, remains partially obscured. One cannot ignore the resilience and durability of Turaif's construction techniques. The mud brick walls, despite centuries of exposure to wind, sun, and occasional floods, retain their form. Towers that once overlooked the valley still rise in skeletal dignity, suggesting methods that were both practical and sophisticated. How were these methods developed, transmitted, and refined? Did the builders rely solely on traditional knowledge passed through generations, or were there techniques, now lost, that enabled such longevity? The architectural evidence challenges assumptions about early urban construction in this region, prompting deeper investigation into the skills and ingenuity of its builders. Beyond structural evidence, Turaif holds signs of cultural and symbolic expression. Some buildings feature intricate decorative motifs, geometric patterns, and inscriptions whose meaning is partially lost. These elements suggest that aesthetic and symbolic concerns were intertwined with practical construction. Could they have functioned as indicators of religious or social identity, markers of communal belonging, or tools for communication with unseen forces? The persistence of these features across multiple buildings hints at a coherent cultural or ideological framework, yet the exact nature of that framework is elusive. The district's decline adds another layer of intrigue. Historical records indicate that Diriyah suffered multiple periods of conflict, economic upheaval, and eventual abandonment. Yet the reasons for the choice of abandonment, the social consequences, and the fate of its inhabitants are only partially understood. Did environmental changes play a role, or were political shifts decisive? Were there unforeseen threats, perhaps from beyond the region, that accelerated its decline? Each question highlights the delicate interplay between human ambition, environmental constraints, and historical circumstance. Standing amidst the ruins today, one is struck by the echo of human presence. The streets, walls, and towers retain a narrative quality, suggesting stories of daily life, ceremonial gatherings, and political maneuvering. The juxtaposition of intimate residential spaces with grand palatial compounds reflects a society attuned to hierarchy, ritual, and social cohesion. And yet, the absence of complete records leaves much to imagination and interpretation. What conversations took place in the courtyards? What decisions were enacted within the towers? What rituals or symbolic practices shaped the rhythm of life here? Speculative interpretations arise naturally when observing Turaif. Some researchers propose that the district served not only as a political and administrative center, but also as a ceremonial landscape, with specific buildings, terraces, and sightlines designed to enhance ritual performance or social cohesion. Others suggest that the urban planning reflects astronomical or cosmological considerations, encoding knowledge of celestial cycles or sacred geography. While these hypotheses remain unconfirmed, they illuminate the multifaceted intelligence and intentionality of the district's creators. The Wadi Hanifa and surrounding desert further enhance the district's enigmatic character. The landscape itself seems integrated into the urban narrative. Natural elevations provide vantage points. Dry riverbeds influence street orientation, and the open horizon frames architectural sightlines. Could the district have been designed as a dialogue with the environment, a reflection of human interaction with natural forces? Were certain streets, walls, or terraces positioned to align with sunrise, sunset, or seasonal phenomena? The interplay between the built and natural landscape underscores the complexity of ancient urban planning and the possibilities of symbolic or ritualized design. Over centuries, natural forces and human intervention have altered the appearance of Turaif. Wind, rain, and sun have weathered walls, softened edges, and erased details. Yet this decay also allows observers to perceive patterns, sightlines, and the spatial logic of the original settlement. Walking through the district, one can reconstruct mental maps of neighborhoods, communal spaces, and defensive zones, gaining insight into the relationship between architecture, environment, and social life. The ruins thus function both as material evidence and as catalysts for imagination, inviting inquiry into the human experience that once animated the site. Turaif's enduring mystery is amplified by the lack of comprehensive documentation for its earliest periods. While some historical records provide glimpses of political events, economic structures, and social hierarchy, they cannot capture the full richness of daily life, cultural practices, or symbolic meaning embedded in the urban fabric. The district's physical presence becomes both evidence and enigma, prompting questions about technology, intention, and societal complexity that may never be fully answered. As daylight fades across the mud brick walls, casting elongated shadows through narrow streets and over collapsed towers, the Turaif district evokes a sense of awe and contemplation. It stands as a monument to human creativity, strategic thinking, and cultural expression, yet it also embodies uncertainty, inviting reflection on the forces that shape civilizations. What knowledge, social practices, or rituals were preserved within its walls? Which stories, now silent, were once enacted in its courtyards and terraces? The answers remain just beyond reach, leaving space for wonder, imagination, and continued investigation. Diriyah's Turaif district, in its enduring ruins, reminds us that history is never fully accessible, that human intention often outlives explanation, and that mystery can be as compelling as certainty. Its mud brick walls, once vibrant with activity, now challenge observers to reconstruct their meaning, to consider the interplay of power, culture, and environment, and to acknowledge the limits of our understanding. Standing here, one cannot help but ask, what other layers of knowledge, skill, or symbolic expression remain hidden within these stones, waiting to reveal themselves to those who are willing to look closely and think deeply? And as our journey drifts from one ancient mystery to the next, the desert opens before us once more, vast, silent, and unchanging. The lines between myth and history blur easily in such a landscape. Here, wind has always been the great storyteller, sculpting dunes that move like tides across a sea of sand. And within this expanse, somewhere beneath the rolling waves of the Sahara, lies a place whispered about for centuries, the lost city known as Ubar. The first impression of this region is one of overwhelming emptiness. A dry horizon stretches outward in every direction, shimmering with heat by day and chilling to the bone by night. The dunes rise and fall like monumental tombs, sealing away whatever once existed here. Yet, even in the stillness, there is a sense that the desert remembers. The sands feel almost restless, shifting, concealing, revealing, hinting at something buried just below the surface. For generations, Ubar was a legend, a city of pillars, a meeting point of ancient trade routes, a place said to shimmer with wealth and vanish like a mirage. Classical writers offered only fleeting references, and local Bedouin passed down tales half-rooted in memory, half-dissolved into myth. Was Ubar a real city? Or was it a metaphor, a cautionary tale about pride and downfall? The answer remained elusive. Still, one detail recurs across traditions. Ubar was not just a settlement, it was a hub, an essential node in a network of movement and commerce that stretched from Arabia to the Mediterranean. This was the land of frankincense, the resin prized by pharaohs, priests, and empires. For centuries, caravans carried it northward along hidden desert paths, following stars by night and ancient markers by day. Somewhere along those routes stood a fortified city, the crown of this trade. Some believed it to be Ubar. But if so, why did it vanish? Archaeologists would eventually begin piecing together fragments of the puzzle. In the late 20th century, using satellite imagery and desert surveys, researchers identified a pattern. old caravan paths converging toward a single point in the modern region of Oman. Excavations soon revealed the remains of an ancient settlement, known today as Shisr. Beneath its surface lay evidence of a substantial structure, perhaps a fortress. It showed signs of long-term occupation, followed by sudden collapse. Sand had swallowed buildings before, but this seemed different. The collapse was not uniform. It suggested the presence of a large cavity beneath the settlement, something that gave way under pressure. A sinkhole, perhaps, formed by the erosion of limestone or by centuries of drawing water from an underground reservoir. Was this collapse the event that ended the city? Or was it only one episode in a much larger story? Mainstream scholars argue that Ubar may never have been a single city at all, but rather a region or a network of trading hubs. In this view, Shisr could have been one such center, important, fortified, but not the legendary metropolis described in folklore. The name Ubar, they suggest, might have been a catch-all term for the ancient peoples who ruled the frankincense trade. This interpretation is practical, grounded in geographic and linguistic evidence, but some find it unsatisfying. Too neat, too vague. Because the stories say more. Oral traditions describe towering pillars, soaring structures unlike anything else known from the region. They speak of immense wealth, caravans stretching to the horizon, and a city that thrived for centuries before meeting a sudden and catastrophic end. Some accounts claim it vanished in a single night. Others imply a slow decline, as trade patterns shifted and empires changed. Still others suggest divine punishment. Could all these accounts be exaggerations layered over time? Almost certainly. But exaggerations often grow from a seed of truth. What was that seed? Walking among the excavated ruins of Shisr, one finds hints, but not answers. The stone foundations suggest an enclosure, perhaps intended for travelers and merchants. Fragments of pottery, tools, and inscriptions indicate long-term habitation. But no towering pillars remain, no grand temples, no evidence of a thriving metropolis. If this was Ubar, it was not the city described in stories, unless the desert has succeeded in erasing nearly all of it. And here the mystery deepens. Satellite images show track-like features radiating outward from the site in all directions. They resemble ancient caravan routes, etched faintly but persistently into the desert surface. Some stretch for hundreds of miles. Why would so many paths converge here, unless it was a location of considerable significance? And if it truly was so important, what else once stood here beyond the limited remains now visible? Could structures of wood or mud brick have vanished entirely? Could older levels of the settlement remain buried deeper than current excavation allows? Or did the legends simply inflate the city's importance over centuries of retelling? There is also the question of the sinkhole. Geological surveys reveal that the ground beneath Shisr is riddled with cavities, natural voids formed by the slow dissolution of limestone. Ancient wells, carved to tap the underground aquifer, might have destabilized the area over time. If water levels receded, the supporting layers could have weakened, eventually triggering a collapse. If so, the destruction of the settlement might indeed have been sudden, dramatic, and memorable, just as the stories say. Yet some interpretations venture further, suggesting that Ubar's disappearance corresponds to shifts in the climate. The once green regions of Arabia gradually dried, turning into the harsh desert seen today. Perhaps the city's fall was not a single event, but a slow suffocation as the land changed. Over centuries, wells could have dried, trade routes shifted, and populations migrated away. What remained might have endured only in legend, preserved by traveling storytellers long after the physical city was gone. Others offer even more speculative ideas. Some fringe theories propose that Ubar was part of a broader network of ancient civilizations whose histories have been lost, overwritten, or hidden beneath the sands. They point to enigmatic megaliths across North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, to unexplained alignments, and to the possibility that the region once hosted societies more advanced than currently acknowledged. These theories often stretch beyond accepted scholarship, yet they persist, not because they are proven, but because the desert's silence leaves room for imagination. And then there are the accounts that place Ubar in a more mystical context. In some traditions, the city is associated with the ancient people of Ad, a tribe mentioned in Arabian lore as exceptionally powerful and wealthy. Stories claim they built the city with lofty pillars, and that they were destroyed for their arrogance, leaving nothing but wind-scoured ruins behind. Historians treat these accounts cautiously, recognizing them as moral narratives rather than factual records. Still, such tales reveal how deeply Ubar is embedded in cultural memory, how its story binds together themes of prosperity, downfall, and the shifting, unpredictable nature of the desert itself. Standing at the edge of the sinkhole today, one cannot help but feel the weight of time pressing in from all sides. The air is dry, but it carries a sense of forgotten movement, as if caravans once passed through here in an endless procession, merchants calling out to one another, camels shifting their loads, the scent of frankincense mingling with dust. It is difficult to reconcile that imagined vibrancy with the quiet emptiness now before us. And yet, the traces remain, faint but persistent. Roads etched into stone, walls worn down to their foundations, stories told again and again, passed from one generation to the next. They all point to something that once existed, something significant enough to shape memory long after the city itself disappeared. What was Ubar truly? A fortress guarding a vital water source? A sprawling trade city? A symbolic idea used to capture the prosperity and fragility of ancient Arabian societies? Or was it something else entirely? Something the desert has chosen not to reveal? As with many ancient mysteries, certainty is elusive. The more we uncover, the more questions arise. Archaeologists continue to study the site, examining artifacts, reconstructing trade networks, modeling past climates. New technologies, ground-penetrating radar, high-resolution satellite imaging, molecular analysis, offer fresh insights. Yet even with each discovery, the heart of the mystery remains intact. Perhaps that is the true power of Ubar's story, not in what we know, but in what we cannot yet explain. Because somewhere beneath these sands, beneath the dunes that shift with each passing wind, may lie more ruins still, or perhaps only memories, or perhaps something we have not yet learned to recognize. As our exploration continues, we are left with one lingering question. How much of Ubar remains hidden, and how much of its story has yet to be told?